There is a moment at the very end of regular show where Pops Maillard flies into the sun. He does it holding his brother. He does it smiling. The entire universe watches. And then the screen goes white, and the show rewinds itself, all the way back to the beginning. Back to two slackers in a bedroom arguing over a keyboard they stole from a wizard. The first episode, the last episode, the same story. And somewhere in that loop, in the space between a stolen keyboard and the death of a cosmic god, regular show told you something about itself that most people never stop to hear. This is a show that aired on Cartoon Network for 8 seasons, from September 6, 2010 to January 16, 2017. 244 episodes. A blue jay and a raccoon who work at a park and somehow, every single week, turn the most mundane task imaginable into a fight for their lives against interdimensional nightmares. That is the surface. That is the version of regular show that most people remember. But underneath that surface, buried in throwaway gags and background details and episodes that aired at 7:30 on a Monday night and were never thought about again, there are theories, interpretations, readings of this show that, if you sit with them long enough, change the way you understand everything that happened across those 8 years. Nobody believes them. That is the point. That is why they are worth talking about. Welcome to Velvo. Get comfortable, settle in, turn the lights down low. This one is going to take a while. We are going to walk through every strange, unsettling, beautiful theory that the regular show fandom has ever produced. The ones that get dismissed, the ones that get laughed at, the ones that make you lie awake at 2 in the morning staring at the ceiling, thinking about a cartoon raccoon. And if you have not subscribed yet, it really does help us keep making these. Let us get into it. The first theory we need to talk about is the one that started everything. The one that has been circulating since before the show even premiered. And it begins not with regular show itself, but with a 7-minute student film made at the California Institute of the Arts in 2006. The film is called 2 in the p.m. It was created by J.G. Quintel as part of his thesis work at CalArts, where he earned a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Character Animation. This short film is, in every meaningful sense, the seed from which regular show grew. The premise is simple. 2 slacker friends are working the graveyard shift at a convenience store. It is Halloween night. They eat some candy that turns out to be laced with a hallucinogenic substance, and then things get strange. The animation warps. Reality bends. One of the characters, a cashier named Sam, briefly transforms into a gumball machine. The other character takes on bird-like features. The mundane world of a late-night convenience store shifts into something surreal, something uncontrollable. Something that looks an awful lot like the world of regular show. Think about what that actually means. The character who turns into a gumball machine is, unmistakably, a prototype for Benson. The bird-like character is a prototype for Mordecai. The dynamic between the 2 slackers, the mischief and consequence, the way the ordinary becomes extraordinary through a chemical lens, all of it maps directly onto the show that would premiere on Cartoon Network 4 years later. Quintel himself sent this film around as part of his pitch process. He wanted to demonstrate the vibe he was going for, the intensity of the surreal nature of the show and how it could be pushed. The short circulated online around 2007 and quickly became a piece of internet folklore, the kind of thing people would link to in forum threads with a subject line that read, "You will not believe what regular show is actually about." And that is where the theory takes root. The acid trip theory. The idea that regular show is not a show about a park. It is a show about a drug trip that never ended. The logic goes like this. In 2 in the p.m., 2 friends accidentally ingest a hallucinogenic substance. They begin to hallucinate. They see themselves as animals. They see ordinary objects as alive, as sentient, as threatening. The world around them becomes a place where anything can happen, where the rules of physics bend and break and reassemble themselves into something absurd. And then the short ends. But the theory says, what if it did not end? What if the trip never stopped? What if everything you see in regular show, every talking gumball machine, every sentient yeti, every magical keyboard and death bowling match and time-traveling volleyball coach, is what these 2 friends are experiencing while their brains dissolve in a convenience store at 2 in the morning? The evidence people point to is not trivial. The character designs carry over directly. The tonal DNA is identical. The escalation pattern, where something mundane spirals into something cosmic, is the exact same structure as a hallucinogenic experience. where ordinary sensory input gets amplified and distorted until it becomes unrecognizable. Mordecai and Rigby are not park workers. They are two guys lying on the floor of a gas station, seeing things. Every monster they fight is a shadow on the wall. Every friend they make is a stranger walking through the store. Every time they almost die, they are just sinking deeper. Nobody believes this. J.G. Quintel has never confirmed it. The show itself never references it. And yet it persists, year after year, because there is something about it that feels true. Not literally true, but structurally true. Regular show does operate like a hallucination. The show does take the ordinary and twist it until it becomes terrifying, and then twist it again until it becomes funny, and then twist it one more time until it becomes oddly beautiful. That is what drugs do. That is also what great storytelling does. And the theory, whether you buy it or not, forces you to look at the show through a lens that makes you see just how deliberately strange its construction really is. That is the foundation. That is the theory that every other theory grows out of. And the reason nobody believes it is the same reason it will not go away. It is too simple and too enormous at the same time. But the acid trip theory is not the only reading of regular show that tries to explain why this world is the way it is. There is another one, darker, quieter, and in some ways more disturbing. It does not say that Mordecai and Rigby are on drugs. It says they are dead. The Purgatory Theory, sometimes called the Afterlife Theory, sometimes called the Limbo Theory. The name changes depending on who is telling it, but the core idea stays the same. The park is not a park. It is a way station between life and death. And every character who works there is someone who died and does not know it yet. The theory points to several things. First, the park itself. Think about what the park actually is within the logic of the show. It is a place where nothing ever changes. Mordecai and Rigby work there. They never get promoted. They never leave. They never build anything lasting. Every episode ends with the status quo restored. The hole in the wall gets fixed. The monster gets defeated. Skips fixes whatever needs fixing. And then the next episode starts and it is as if nothing happened. That is not how a job works. That is not how life works. But it is, the theory argues, how purgatory works. A place of stasis. A place where you repeat the same patterns over and over, not because you choose to, but because you are stuck. Second, the characters. Look at who works at the park. You have Mordecai, a 23-year-old Blue Jay who dropped out of art school and has no ambition. You have Rigby, his best friend, who never graduated high school and actively resists any form of growth or responsibility. You have Benson, a man consumed by rage, trapped in a management position where nobody respects him and nothing he does matters. You have Skips, an immortal being who has lived for centuries and chooses to spend eternity doing maintenance work. You have Muscle Man, a grotesque figure who uses humor to mask whatever is underneath. You have High Five Ghost, who is literally a ghost. And you have Pops, a childlike man in his 50s who does not understand the world around him. That is not a workforce. That is a waiting room. The theory says each character represents a different kind of spiritual stagnation. Mordecai is stuck because he cannot commit to a career, to a relationship, to a version of himself that requires effort. Rigby is stuck because he cannot grow up. Benson is stuck because he cannot let go of his anger. Skips is stuck because he cannot stop mourning. Pops is stuck because he never fully entered the real world to begin with. And High Five Ghost is the one who gives the game away, because he is not metaphorically dead. He is actually, literally, a ghost. The show does not even bother to hide it. There is a version of this theory that goes further. It says the supernatural events that happen in every episode are not random. They are tests. Challenges designed to see if the characters can grow, can change, can earn their way out of the park and into whatever comes next. And the reason the show reset every week, the reason nothing ever stuck, is because they kept failing. They kept falling back into the same patterns. Mordecai kept being indecisive. Rigby kept being selfish. Benson kept exploding. And so the park kept them, held them, waited for them to figure it out. The most compelling piece of evidence for this theory comes from the series finale itself, a regular epic final battle, which aired on January 16, 2017. In the finale, after Pop sacrifices himself to save the universe, there is an epilogue. The show jumps forward 25 years. We see Mordecai as a successful painter, married to a bat named Steph with 3 children. We see Rigby married to Eileen, raising 2 daughters. We see Muscle Man and Starla in a better trailer with a pack of kids. We see High Five Ghost touring Prague as a DJ. The characters have grown. They have changed. They have, finally, moved on. But here is the detail that the Purgatory Theory latches onto. Pops is shown watching all of this from what appears to be an afterlife. He watches his friends on a VHS tape labeled Regular Show. 25 years after his death, Mr. Maillard joins him there. They watch together. And the implication, the thing the show never says out loud but shows you in the clearest possible terms, is that the entire show, all 8 seasons, all 244 episodes, was something being observed from the other side. The show was always being watched from the afterlife. That is not subtext. That is text. The show literally frames itself as a recording being viewed by a dead character in a realm beyond death. And if Pops is watching the show from the afterlife, then what does that make the show? What does that make the park? What does that make us? Nobody believes the Purgatory Theory because it sounds like every other "they were dead the whole time" theory that gets applied to every show that has ever existed. It sounds lazy. It sounds like a shortcut. But Regular Show did something that most shows never do. It actually put the afterlife on screen. It actually showed you a character watching the events of the series from beyond death. It did not wink at the theory. It built the theory into its finale and dared you to notice. That is not a small thing. The acid trip theory says the show is a hallucination. The Purgatory Theory says the show is a memory being replayed in the afterlife. Both theories are trying to answer the same question. Why is this world so strange? Why do 2 park workers keep encountering gods and demons and sentient electronics and the physical manifestation of death itself? The show never gives you a straight answer, but it gives you enough pieces to build several answers of your own. And the fact that none of them quite fit is, perhaps, the most Regular Show thing about them. There is something else buried in the show's relationship with death that most people walk right past. Something that connects to the Purgatory Theory but goes in a direction that is, if anything, even stranger. It has to do with skips, and it has to do with what immortality actually looks like when you strip away the mythology and just watch what the character does. Skips is the one character in Regular Show who knows everything. That is how the show uses him. Something goes wrong, something supernatural crashes into the park, and someone says, "We should ask Skips." And Skips knows. He always knows. He has a solution, or a ritual, or a piece of ancient knowledge that resolves the crisis. The show plays this as a reliable gag. Skips is the competent one. Skips is the fixer. But there is a theory about Skips that reframes his entire role in the show, and it starts with a question that sounds simple until you actually try to answer it. Why does an immortal being spend eternity doing maintenance at a public park? His backstory, when the show finally reveals it, is one of the most genuinely devastating things Regular Show ever produced. The episode is called Skip's Story. It is Season 5, Episode 22. It aired on April 14th, 2014, and it tells you everything you need to know about why Skips is the way he is. His real name is not Skips. His real name is Walks. He was a young man, centuries ago, and he fell in love with a woman named Mona. They would skip together, the 2 of them, through fields and down streets and across the grounds of whatever world they inhabited. It was their thing, their private joy. The physical act of skipping became inseparable from the feeling of being loved. And then Mona died. She died saving Walks during a confrontation with Clorgbane the Destroyer, a bully of cosmic proportions, who would return to threaten the world every 157 years. During their encounter at prom, Clorgbane's attack sent debris crashing from the ceiling, and Mona pushed Walks out of the way. She took the impact instead. Walks survived. Mona did not. After her death, the Guardians of Eternal Youth offered Walks immortality. Someone needed to be there to fight Clorgbane every time he returned. Walks accepted. They asked him what name he wanted to be reborn under. And remembering the woman he loved, remembering the way they moved through the world together, he said one word: Skips. Let that sit for a second. Every time you see Skips moving across the screen, bouncing instead of walking, that is not a quirk. That is grief. That is a man performing his mourning with every step he takes, every single day, for centuries. The show hinted at this detail in earlier episodes, but Skip's story gave the full picture. And the full picture is this. Skips is not the competent one because he is wise. He is the competent one because he has been alive long enough to have seen everything go wrong in every possible way, and the only thing that keeps him going is the repetition. Fix the problem, do the maintenance, keep the park running, do it again tomorrow, and the day after that, and the century after that. The theory that grows out of this is not about Skips's past, it is about his present. The theory says that Skips is not just an immortal who happens to work at the park. Skips is the reason the park exists. He is its anchor, its guardian. The park is not a normal place. Everyone in the show acknowledges this. And the theory says the reason it is not a normal place is because Skips's presence warps reality around him. He has lived so long, carried so much supernatural weight, fought so many cosmic battles, that he has become a kind of nexus. Strange things happen at the park because Skips is there. Remove Skips and the park becomes ordinary. Remove Skips and the show does not exist. There is evidence for this that people overlook. In the episode Free Cake, which is Season 1, Episode 5, it is revealed that Skips must perform a spirit dance every year on his birthday to maintain his eternal youth. The guardians of eternal youth, 5 enormous babies with deep voices, are the ones who granted him this power. If he fails to perform the dance, he loses his immortality and ages rapidly. The park crew helps him complete the ritual, and the show treats this as a fun adventure, a wacky side quest. But think about what is actually happening. An immortal being is performing a yearly ritual to maintain a supernatural covenant with cosmic entities, and this ritual takes place at a public park. That is not normal maintenance. That is a magical anchor point. The park is where Skips does his ritual, because the park is where Skips's power is concentrated. And here is the detail that makes the theory truly strange. Skips is the only character in regular show who has 5 fingers. Every other character has 4. In animation, this is not unusual. 4-fingered characters are standard in cartoons, from The Simpsons to Mickey Mouse. But Skips has 5. The show never explains this. It never draws attention to it. But fans noticed. And the theory that emerged is that Skips's 5 fingers are a marker of his otherness, his separation from the cartoon world around him. In The Simpsons, the only characters with 5 fingers are God and Jesus. The implication, whether intentional or not, is that Skips occupies a different plane of existence than everyone around him. He is not a character in the show. He is something else, something older, something that the show's reality bends around rather than contains. Most people dismiss this. It is too much weight to put on a finger count. But combined with his backstory, combined with his role as the one who always knows, combined with the fact that he has been alive for centuries and chooses to spend that time at this specific park, the theory builds a version of Skips that is genuinely unsettling. He is not a supporting character. He is the show's god, and he is grieving, and the entire world you are watching is a byproduct of his grief. Now, there is a character in regular show who gets treated as a joke more consistently than any other. A character whose entire personality is built around crude humor and aggressive insecurity, and a catchphrase that became one of the most recognizable memes in Cartoon Network history. And there is a theory about this character that, if you follow it to its logical conclusion, turns everything you think you know about him inside out. Muscle Man, Mitch Sorenstein, the green-skinned, shirtless, perpetually sweating park worker, whose contribution to every conversation is some variation of, "You know who else does that? My mom." The show plays Muscle Man as comic relief. He is loud. He is obnoxious. He is the character that other characters roll their eyes at. He is the guy who takes his shirt off and swings it over his head when he gets excited. He is, by almost every measure the show gives you, the least serious person in the cast. The theory says, this is exactly what Muscle Man wants you to think. Look at what the show actually tells you about Muscle Man when it stops making jokes long enough to let you see. In the episode Trucker Hall of Fame, it is revealed that Muscle Man and Starla were prom dates in high school. Their bond is not a gag. It is the longest-running romantic relationship in the entire show, and it is played, when the show wants it to be, with complete sincerity. Muscle Man loves Starla with a depth and consistency that none of the other characters can match. Mordecai cannot commit to Margaret or CJ. Rigby takes years to acknowledge his feelings for Eileen. But Muscle Man knew who he loved and never wavered. Not once. In the end of Muscle Man, Season 6, the title suggests something dark. The end of Muscle Man, and when the episode begins, it plays into that expectation. Muscle Man seems to be preparing for his own death. He gives away possessions, he says goodbye. The other characters are worried, and then the reveal comes. The end of Muscle Man is not death. It is the end of his bachelorhood. He is proposing to Starla. He is giving up his identity as the wild, unattached party animal, the guy who lives in a trailer and makes jokes about his mother, because he loves someone enough to change. That is not the behavior of a clown. That is the behavior of a man who has been performing for his entire life and finally decides to stop. The theory about Muscle Man is that his entire personality, the jokes, the aggression, the crudeness, the constant deflection through humor, is armor. And the armor is protecting something specific. The theory points to his relationship with his father, Muscle Dad, and to the "my mom" jokes as evidence. The traditional version of the joke, the one everyone else tells, is "your mom." It is an attack. It is directed outward. Muscle Man inverts it. He makes it about his own mother. He turns the aggression inward. And the theory says this is not random. Muscle Man grew up in a family where masculinity was performed through toughness, through physical labor, through a specific kind of blue-collar aggression. His father is a trucker. His brother, Muscle Bro, follows the same pattern. The "my mom" jokes are not jokes. They are a displacement. They are Muscle Man taking the violence that was directed at him in childhood and redirecting it at himself, disguised as comedy, because that is the only way he knows how to process it. Few people take this seriously. It sounds like an overreading. It sounds like projecting psychology onto a character whose purpose is to make kids laugh. But regular show does something with Muscle Man across 8 seasons that quietly proves the theory right. It lets him grow. It lets him fall in love and propose and get married. In the episode, Dumped at the Altar, and have a daughter. By the finale, Muscle Man is not the joke anymore. He is the one character who figured it out. He is the one who built something lasting. And he did it by putting down the armor, one piece at a time, so slowly that nobody noticed it was happening until it was already done. The show does not comment on this. It does not add a speech about Muscle Man's growth. It does not give him a moment of tearful self-awareness. It just shows you the man he became and lets you work backward to understand the man he was pretending to be. That is the kind of storytelling that separates regular show from everything else on the network. It trusts you to see it, and the theory, the one nobody believes, is just the act of seeing it clearly. There is another character whose surface reading hides something much stranger, and this one the show actually confirmed. But even the confirmation did not prepare anyone for what it meant. Thomas, the goat, the intern, the most forgettable character in the entire cast. And the theory that turned out to be true is one of the wildest things the show ever did. For 3 seasons, Thomas was background noise. He was the new guy. The intern who showed up, did not say much, and blended into the scenery so completely that entire episodes could go by without you remembering he existed. He was, by design, the least interesting person at the park, and fans theorized, half joking, that there had to be a reason for this. No show makes a character that bland by accident. Either the writers did not know what to do with him, or they were hiding something. They were hiding something. In the Season 6 special, The Real Thomas, Rigby discovers the truth about Thomas the Goat intern. His real name is not Thomas. It is Nikolai. He is a Russian spy. He was sent to America specifically to infiltrate the park and steal it for the Russian government using massive rockets, as part of a plan to improve Russian parks. His blandness was not bad writing. It was a cover. Every forgettable moment, every time Thomas faded into the background, he was doing exactly what a spy is supposed to do. He was being invisible. But then the episode goes further. When Nikolai discovers that Russia does not actually want to steal the park but instead wants to blow it up, killing everyone on it as a way around existing treaties, he turns. He double-crosses his own government. He saves his friends, and then he disappears, going into hiding from both the United States and Russia, leaving the park crew behind with nothing but a goodbye and a real name they will never use. Rigby says, as Nikolai leaves, "You will always be Thomas to us," and the show never brings him back. Think about what the show just told you. For 3 years, you were watching a spy. Every scene Thomas was in, every background moment, every forgettable interaction was a performance within a performance. The character was pretending to be boring, And the show was pretending the character was poorly written. Both the character and the show were lying to you at the same time, and neither one broke until the reveal landed. The theory that nobody believes is not about the reveal itself. The reveal is confirmed canon. The theory is about what Thomas represents within the larger structure of the show. The theory says that Thomas is regular show telling you, in the most direct way possible, that nothing in this show is what it appears to be. If the most boring character can turn out to be a foreign intelligence operative, then every assumption you have made about every other character is suspect. Every gag could be a cover story. Every throwaway episode could be hiding something. Thomas is the show's thesis statement, dressed up as a background character, waiting 3 years for someone to notice. That is a very different reading of regular show, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. There is another reading of regular show that takes the Thomas revelation and applies it backward across the entire history of the show's villains. The connected villains theory. And this one does not just change how you see one character. It changes how you see every threat the park has ever faced. In the Season 4 premiere, Exit 9B, which aired on October 1st, 2012, something extraordinary happens. Garrett Bobby Ferguson Jr., the son of a floating head villain that Mordecai and Rigby defeated in an earlier season, opens a portal to the underworld. And through that portal come all the villains, every single one. The Destroyer of Worlds, the Hot Dogs, the Hammer, Party Pete, the Summertime Song, Susan, Darthon, the Zombies, the Night Owl, the Duck Collector, the Order of the Blondes, the Stagman, every monster and maniac and supernatural threat that the park workers have ever faced, all of them, alive again, standing in the park, ready for revenge. The surface reading of Exit 9B is that it is a celebration, a greatest hits episode, a chance for the show to bring back all its old villains for one massive battle. And it is that. It works as that. But the connected villains theory says something else is happening. The theory says, Exit 9B proves that all the villains are connected. Not thematically, literally. They all end up in the same underworld. They all respond to the same portal. They all share a common destination after the park workers defeat them. And that means the supernatural threats in regular show are not random. They are not isolated incidents. They are part of a system, a network, an ecology of the strange. The theory says the park sits on a kind of supernatural fault line, a place where the boundary between the normal world and the underworld is thin enough to be punctured. Every episode where something weird happens, every time the mundane escalates into the impossible, is a minor breach, a crack in the barrier. And every villain that comes through that crack, whether it is a giant floating head or a sentient hot dog or an evil British taxicab, comes from the same place. They are all inhabitants of the same underworld. They all have the same address. This connects to the Skips theory and the Pops theory in ways that are almost too neat. If the park sits on a supernatural fault line, then the question becomes, what caused the fault line? And the theories we have already discussed offer two answers. Skips's immortal presence warps reality, or Pops's cosmic energy leaks into his surroundings. Either way, the park is not a coincidence. The park is a consequence. The weirdness is not happening to the characters. The characters are causing the weirdness, and the underworld is responding. Exit 9B also does something structurally that the show never does before or after. It acknowledges continuity. Regular show is, for most of its run, episodic. What happens in one episode stays in that episode. But Exit 9B says no. Everything that happened counts. Every villain you fought is still out there, somewhere, in the underworld, waiting. The show's episodic format was never an erasure. It was a deferral. The consequences were not gone. They were accumulating. And in Exit 9B, they all come due at once. The connected villains theory says this is one of the most sophisticated things the show ever did. It took its own formula, the episodic reset, the lack of consequences, the nothing matters because it will all go back to normal next week, structure. And it proved that something did matter. Everything mattered. Every fight, every villain, every escalation. The underworld was keeping score. And when the bill came, it came in the form of every single enemy the park had ever made, standing in the yard, asking for payment. Most dismiss this theory in its most extreme form, the idea that every villain is part of a coordinated network consciously targeting the park. That is too conspiratorial. But the facts are there. The portal is there. The underworld is there. The villains all end up in the same place. And Exit 9B is the episode that proves it. Speaking of episodes that reveal more than they appear to, there is one from early in the show's run that most people remember as a simple horror parody, and there is a reading of it that cuts much deeper than the joke. Hello Governor, Season 2, Episode 1, the first episode of the second season. It aired on November 29, 2010. Mordecai and Rigby watch an old British horror movie about a possessed taxicab that murders people. The movie is terrible. It is cheesy and poorly made and not remotely scary by any objective standard, and Rigby becomes terrified of it. Not mildly frightened, genuinely, debilitatingly terrified. He cannot sleep. He sees the taxi everywhere. He is paralyzed by a fear that he knows, intellectually, is irrational. And the episode follows his attempts to overcome this fear, while the fear, in true regular show fashion, manifests as an actual supernatural threat. The British taxi appears in reality. It tries to kill him, and the park crew has to fight it off. The theory about Hello Governor is that the episode is not about a taxi, it is about anxiety. Specifically, it is about the experience of knowing that your fear is irrational and being unable to stop feeling it anyway. Rigby knows the movie is bad. He knows the taxi is not real. He knows his fear does not make sense. And none of that knowledge helps. The fear is there. It is in his body. It is in his dreams. It is controlling his behavior. And the distance between what he knows and what he feels is the entire width of the episode. This connects to a broader pattern we will explore in depth later, the way regular show literalizes internal states. Anxiety becomes a monster. Fear becomes a taxi. Jealousy becomes a murder. The show takes the feelings that people experience and gives them physical form, and then the characters have to fight them. And the fighting is therapeutic. Rigby defeats the taxi. He overcomes the fear. But the theory says the important part is not the victory. The important part is the show's refusal to dismiss the fear as silly. The other characters make fun of Rigby for being scared of a bad movie, but the show itself does not dismiss him. The show makes the taxi real. It validates the fear by making it manifest. It says, your anxiety may be irrational, but the experience of it is real, and you deserve to fight it on its own terms. That is a remarkably generous thing for a show to do. Most comedies about irrational fear use the fear as the punchline. You are afraid of something dumb. Laugh. But regular show makes the dumb thing dangerous. It says, the dumb thing can hurt you. It should be taken seriously. And then it gives you the tools to beat it. That is not a theory about the show. That is the show's actual philosophy, stated plainly in its second season premiere, and then restated in every Escalation episode that follows. Now we need to talk about the two characters at the center of everything, Mordecai and Rigby, the blue jay and the raccoon, best friends since childhood, partners in every disaster the show ever produced. And there is a theory about their friendship that is, when you actually lay out the evidence, one of the most painful things the fandom has ever articulated. The theory is simple. Rigby is not Mordecai's best friend. Rigby is the person who destroyed Mordecai's life, and he did it on purpose. This needs to be stated plainly. Rigby forged a college rejection letter. The full story comes out in regular show, the movie, which aired on November 25, 2015. The film reveals that both Mordecai and Rigby applied to college university after high school. Rigby was rejected. Mordecai was accepted. And when Rigby found out, he panicked. He did not want to lose his best friend. He did not want to be left behind, while Mordecai went off to a university and built a life that did not include him. So he went to Mordecai's house before Mordecai got home, found the acceptance letter, and forged a rejection letter in its place. Mordecai came home, saw the fake letter, and believed he had been rejected. Rigby, meanwhile, told everyone he had been accepted, a lie he maintained for years. Think about what that actually means. Mordecai was accepted to college. He had a path forward. He had a chance to study art, to develop the talent that the show makes clear he possesses, to build a career and a life on his own terms. And Rigby took that from him. Not because Rigby was malicious in the traditional sense. Not because Rigby wanted Mordecai to suffer, but because Rigby wanted Mordecai to stay. Rigby's fear of abandonment was so overwhelming that he chose to sabotage his best friend's future, rather than face the possibility of losing him. And it worked. Mordecai never went to college. He ended up at the park. He ended up doing maintenance work alongside the person who kept him there. For years, Mordecai believed that he was not good enough, that the rejection was his fault, that art school did not want him, that he was destined to mow lawns and rake leaves and live in a house with a raccoon who could not even be bothered to do his share of the work. And the whole time, the truth was sitting in Rigby's pocket, a crumpled piece of paper that said yes instead of no. When Mordecai finally finds out, in the movie, his reaction is devastating. He calls himself an idiot for not seeing it. He says, plainly, that Rigby was holding him back, and he ends the friendship. He walks away. The movie then follows them as they try to save the universe from a time-traveling volleyball coach, because this is still regular show, but the emotional core of the film is not the villain. It is the question of whether Mordecai can forgive the person who stole his future. The theory that nobody believes goes further than the movie does. The theory says that Rigby's sabotage is not an isolated incident. It is a pattern. The theory says that across the entire run of the show, Rigby has been systematically undermining Mordecai's ability to grow, to change, to become something more than a park worker, because growth would mean separation, and separation is the one thing Rigby cannot survive. Look at the evidence. Every time Mordecai tries to pursue Margaret, Rigby interferes. He creates distractions. He engineers situations where Mordecai has to choose between the relationship and the friendship. He makes Margaret uncomfortable. He undermines Mordecai's confidence at crucial moments. The show plays this as Rigby being annoying, but if you watch it through the lens of the college letter, it is not annoyance. It is strategy. Rigby learned, at the moment he forged that letter, that he could control Mordecai's life by removing his options, and he never stopped doing it. The counter-argument is that Rigby does grow. He goes back to high school. In the Season 7 episode Rigby's Graduation Day Special, he actually graduates. He earns his diploma. He becomes, by the end of the series, a better version of himself. And that is true. Rigby does grow, but the theory says that his growth only becomes possible when the show forces it, when the writers decide it is time for him to stop being the anchor. For 6 seasons, Rigby is the reason nothing changes. For 6 seasons, Rigby is the force that keeps Mordecai at the park, keeps him single, keeps him stagnant. The growth in Season 7 is not a rebuttal of the theory. It is the show finally acknowledging what it had been doing. The movie even shows you what happens when Rigby's influence is removed. In the future timeline, when Mordecai and Rigby are estranged, Mordecai becomes a cybernetic figure consumed by bitterness. He is not free. He is not thriving. He is worse. And that is the movie's most devastating argument. Rigby held Mordecai back, but without Rigby, Mordecai falls apart entirely. The sabotage and the love are inseparable. Rigby ruined Mordecai's life, and also gave Mordecai the only life he knows how to live. Those two things cannot both be true, except they are. Nobody believes this theory because it makes the show unbearable. It turns every buddy comedy moment into a hostage situation. It turns every laugh into evidence of something broken. But the show gave you the college letter. The show told you, in its own movie, that Rigby forged a rejection letter to keep Mordecai from leaving. That is not subtext. That is the text. Everything the theory extracts from the rest of the series is just the logical consequence of that single, confirmed act. And that brings us to Benson, the gumball machine, the manager, the angriest character on television, and a theory about his rage that turns a running gag into something that borders on tragic. Benson yells. That is his thing. He yells at Mordecai and Rigby for slacking off. He threatens to fire them. His face turns red. His gumballs rattle inside him. He screams until his body shakes. The show uses Benson's anger as comedy, and it works. It is funny to watch a gumball machine have a meltdown over 2 employees who will not rake the leaves. But the theory says that Benson's anger is not a personality trait. It is a trauma response. And the show, when you look at it carefully, agrees. The episode Think Positive is from Season 3. In this episode, Pops, who is technically Benson's employer through his father Mr. Mellard's ownership of the park, tells Benson he is not allowed to yell anymore. No more screaming at employees. No more outbursts. Benson has to manage with kindness. And what happens is not played entirely for laughs. Benson tries to hold it in. He suppresses his rage. And the suppression does not make the anger go away. It makes it worse. It builds. It compounds. It becomes physical. Benson's gumballs begin to glow. They heat up. They catch fire. And when the pressure finally becomes too much, Benson erupts with a force that nearly destroys everything around him. Remove the cartoon physics and describe what actually happened. A man was told he could not express his anger. He tried to comply. The suppressed emotion became so overwhelming that it nearly destroyed him and everyone around him. That is not a comedy premise. That is a clinical description of what happens when someone with unprocessed rage is told to simply stop feeling it. The theory about Benson goes deeper. It says his anger is rooted in his family. The show reveals, across several episodes, that Benson's father taught him that anger was the correct response to the world. Not assertiveness, not firmness, anger. His father modeled a version of masculinity where the only way to get what you want is to yell until people give it to you. And Benson internalized that. He became the screaming manager not because Mordecai and Rigby deserve it, although they often do, but because screaming is the only emotional register he was ever taught. But there is a second layer to the theory that is even more unsettling. It has to do with what Benson is, not who he is, what he is. He is a gumball machine. The show never explains how a gumball machine became sentient, got a job, and developed the capacity for human emotion. It just is. Benson is a gumball machine. But the acid trip theory and 2 in the PM offer a possible answer. In Quintel's student film, the cashier Sam transforms into a gumball machine during the drug trip. The transformation is not voluntary. It is something that happens to him. He becomes an object. He becomes something that other people use, put coins into, take things from. And the theory says that Benson's entire existence is a metaphor for that feeling. The feeling of being an object, the feeling of being used, the feeling of being a container that other people reach into and take from. And when the container is empty, when there is nothing left to give, the only thing that remains is rage. Nobody believes this because it is almost too neat. It wraps the show's weirdest visual gag into a coherent psychological framework that makes too much sense. But the pieces are there. The student film, the transformation, the anger, the family history, the episode where suppressed emotion literally becomes a destructive force. Benson is not a joke. Benson is a portrait of someone who was never allowed to feel anything except fury, drawn as a machine because that is what people who are never allowed to feel eventually become. If you are enjoying this, take a moment to subscribe. It genuinely helps the channel grow, and it means we get to keep making these. There is a theory about Mordecai's romantic life that reframes one of the show's most frustrating storylines into something deliberate, something structural, and something that reveals more about the show's understanding of emotional development than any single episode could. The theory is this: Mordecai does not fail at relationships because the writers could not figure out what to do with him. Mordecai fails at relationships because failure is the point. Because regular show is, underneath everything else, a show about a man who is constitutionally incapable of choosing, and the show uses his romantic arc to prove it. Margaret, CJ, 2 women, 2 relationships, 1 pattern, and the pattern is always the same. Mordecai meets someone, he falls, he invests emotionally, he gets close to the moment where he has to commit, where he has to say, "This is what I want, and I am going to fight for it," and then he freezes, he hesitates. He does something that sabotages the relationship at the exact moment it was about to work. He kisses Margaret in front of CJ. He gives a speech about not knowing who his soulmate is at someone else's wedding. He creates triangles where there should be straight lines. And every time, the show frames this as Mordecai's failure. Not bad luck, not circumstance. Mordecai's failure. Margaret is introduced in season 1. She is a Robin who works at a coffee shop. Mordecai develops feelings for her immediately, and the show spends multiple seasons exploring his inability to act on those feelings. He cannot tell her how he feels. He overthinks every interaction. He turns simple moments into catastrophes because his fear of rejection overrides his desire for connection. When they finally get together, it does not last. Margaret gets accepted to her dream college and leaves. Mordecai is devastated, and the show lets that devastation sit. It does not resolve it quickly. It does not give Mordecai an easy replacement. It makes him feel the loss. And then CJ arrives. Cloudy J, a cloud woman who is, in many ways, the better match. She is fun. She is direct. She enjoys the same things Mordecai does. She does not make him perform or pretend. Their relationship is easier, more natural, more sustainable, and Mordecai destroys it. He destroys it because Margaret comes back into his orbit, and he cannot let go of the possibility that Margaret might still be the answer. He kisses Margaret in front of CJ. He proves, in front of everyone, that he is the kind of person who will always choose the option he does not have over the option he does. CJ does not take this quietly. Her anger is literally atmospheric. She becomes a storm. She transforms into a hurricane. The show literalizes her emotional state in a way that is both visually stunning and deeply unfair to her character. She is the one who was wronged. She is the one who gave Mordecai a chance he did not deserve. And her response to his betrayal is depicted as dangerous, unstable, something that needs to be contained. The show does not always handle CJ well, but the theory says the show handles Mordecai perfectly, because the point was never to give him a happy ending. The point was to show you what happens to someone who cannot commit. The theory says Mordecai's romantic failures are a mirror of the show's central thesis. Regular show is about stagnation. It is about people who are stuck. And Mordecai is the most stuck of all, because his stagnation is not caused by external forces. It is not caused by Rigby, although Rigby does not help. It is not caused by the park, although the park enables it. Mordecai's stagnation comes from inside. He is afraid of choosing, because choosing means closing a door, and closing a door means accepting that the other doors are gone. So he stands in the hallway. He stands there for 8 seasons. He stands there while women love him and he loves them back, and the love goes nowhere because he will not step through. And then the finale does something that nobody expected. It skips forward 25 years, and Mordecai is married, not to Margaret, not to CJ, to a bat named Steph, a character the audience has never met. He is a successful painter. He has 3 children. He is happy, and the show gives you no explanation. It does not show you how Mordecai met Steph. It does not show you the moment he finally learned to commit. It just shows you the result. 25 years later, he figured it out. The theory says this is the most realistic thing the show ever did, because that is how growth actually works. Not in a single dramatic moment, not in a season finale confession, not in a kiss in the rain. Growth happens in the gaps. In the years the camera is not watching. In the boring, undramatic, unseeable process of a person slowly, finally, learning to choose. The show refuses to show you Mordecai's growth because showing it would diminish it. The growth is private, the growth is his, and the show respects him enough to let him have it off screen. Nobody believes this theory because it requires you to accept that one of the show's most frustrating storylines was intentionally frustrating. It requires you to trust that the writers knew exactly what they were doing when they made Mordecai fail, over and over, in ways that made the audience angry. It is easier to believe they botched the romance than to believe they executed it perfectly. But look at the finale. Look at Steph. Look at the 25-year gap. The show knew where Mordecai was going. It just knew that the journey would not be interesting to watch. So it showed you the stuckness instead. 8 seasons of stuckness, and then one flash forward that proves it was all temporary. That is the whole story. Now we need to talk about the character who, for 7 seasons, seemed like the simplest person in the cast. The one the audience loved because he was kind and gentle and harmless and sweet. The one who called everyone jolly good show and laughed at things that were not funny and seemed to exist in a permanent state of childlike wonder. And then the show told you what he really was, and nothing was simple anymore. Pops Mallard, born Megacranus, the embodiment of pure good, the chosen one, an alien entity as old as the universe itself, possibly older, locked in an eternal cycle of cosmic warfare with his twin brother, Malum Cranus, the embodiment of pure evil, across infinite iterations of reality, a being whose every battle with his opposite number ended in stalemate, causing the entire universe to reset, to start over, to replay with different details but the same outcome, again and again and again, for an unknowable number of cycles. That is Pops, the lollipop-headed man who giggles at butterflies. That is who he was the entire time. The theory about Pops is not that the reveal was surprising. Everyone was surprised. The theory is that the reveal was always there, that the show was telling you, from the very first episode, exactly what Pops was, and you did not see it because the show dressed the truth in a silly voice and a top hat and a childlike personality that made it impossible to take seriously. Look at Pops from the beginning. He is not just odd, he is alien. He does not understand how money works, which is why he pays his taxes with lollipops. He does not understand social cues. He does not understand conflict. He does not understand why people are mean. The show plays this as naivete, sweet, harmless, lovable naivete. But the theory says it is not naivete, it is distance. Pops does not understand human behavior because Pops is not human. He is a cosmic entity who was placed on Earth as an infant, found inside an asteroid by Mr. Maillard, and raised as a human child despite being nothing of the sort. Mr. Mallard named him Pops because the baby looked old. Think about that detail. A man finds an alien infant inside a space rock, and the infant looks elderly. It looks ancient because it is ancient. It is as old as the universe. It has lived through cycle after cycle of cosmic conflict, born and reborn each time the universe resets, and each time it arrives on Earth looking like an infant that has seen too much. The name Pops is a joke. It is also, accidentally, the most accurate name anyone could have given him. He is the oldest thing in the show. He is older than Skips. He is older than the Guardians of Eternal Youth. He is older than death. He is the beginning and the end, and the show put him in a park uniform and let him hand out butterscotch. The theory goes deeper. It says that every strange event at the park, every monster, every dimensional rift, every moment where reality bent and broke and reassembled itself, was not random. It was not attracted by Skips's presence, as the Skips theory suggests. It was generated by Pops. The theory says that Pops's cosmic nature leaks. His power, his connection to the fundamental forces of the universe, seeps into his surroundings and warps them. The park is not just a park because the park houses a god who does not know he is a god. The monsters are not invaders. They are symptoms. They are what happens when an entity of pure good radiates energy into a world that was not built to contain it. There is evidence for this in the show's structure. Notice how the supernatural incidents escalate across the seasons. In Season 1, the threats are relatively contained. A magical keyboard, a haunted video, a sentient hot dog. But by Season 7 and 8, the threats are cosmic. The entire park goes to space. Anti-Pops arrives. The universe itself is at stake. The escalation tracks perfectly with Pops' journey towards self-awareness. The closer Pops gets to understanding what he is, the bigger the disturbances become. The park's weirdness is not a setting detail. It is a symptom of Pops' awakening. And then the finale, a regular epic final battle. 3 parts, aired January 16, 2017. Pops faces Anti-Pops. The show has told you, through the character of Earl and through Mr. Maillard's confession, that this fight has happened before. Many times. Every previous fight ended in a stalemate. The universe reset. Everything started over. Different details, same ending. The cycle was unbreakable. Until Pops broke it. He did not break it with force. He did not break it with a weapon or a power or a clever strategy. He broke it with a hug. He embraced his brother. He showed Anti-Pops genuine love, the kind that does not try to defeat its opposite but instead absorbs it. And then, still holding his brother, Pops flew into the sun. He ended the cycle by removing himself from it. He chose death over stalemate. He chose an ending over an infinite loop. And the universe, for the first time, did not reset. The theory that nobody believes says this moment redefines the entire show. If the universe has been resetting, if Pops and Anti-Pops have been fighting this same battle across multiple iterations of reality, then the regular show you watched is just one cycle, one version, one iteration of a story that has played out differently many times before. The park, the characters, the friendships, the jokes, all of it existed within a cosmic loop that was always going to end in destruction unless someone chose to sacrifice themselves instead. And the person who made that choice was the silliest character on the show, the one you took least seriously, the one you loved because he seemed harmless. Pops was never harmless. Pops was the most dangerous and the most powerful being in the entire show. And the only reason the universe survived is that his power took the form of kindness instead of conquest. That is not a character arc. That is a theology. Nobody believes this theory at its most extreme, the idea that every single supernatural event was generated by Pops' latent energy. It is too tidy. It explains too much. But the facts the theory builds on are not disputed. Pops is a cosmic entity. The universe did reset. The park did escalate. And a hug did save everything. The theory just connects those facts into a picture that the show never explicitly drew but left all the materials for, sitting in a pile on the table, waiting for someone to assemble them. And there is one more dimension to the Pops theory that deserves its own moment. It has to do with what happens in Season 8, when the park goes to space. The entire final season of regular show takes place aboard the Space Tree, a massive cosmic station. The park, the physical park with its grass and its fountain and its house, is launched into orbit by Mr. Maillard's preparations, and the characters, who have spent 7 seasons living in a world where the supernatural invades the mundane, are suddenly living in a world where the supernatural is the baseline. There is no mundane anymore. There is only space. The theory says Season 8 is the moment when Pops' energy stops leaking and starts flooding. The escalation we discussed earlier, the slow increase in the scale of threats from Season 1 through Season 7, was the leak. Season 8 is the dam breaking. Pops is getting closer to his destiny. Anti-Pops is approaching. The cosmic conflict that has been cycling for eons is reaching its climax. And the park, the place that was warped by Pops' latent power for 7 seasons, cannot contain it anymore. It has to leave Earth. It has to enter the space where Pops' true nature exists, the cosmic realm of Lollyland and its eternal warfare. Season 8 is a polarizing season. Some fans love it. Some fans feel that the shift to space betrays the show's identity, that the charm of regular show was always the contrast between the mundane and the supernatural, and removing the mundane removed the contrast. The theory says both reactions are correct. Season 8 does betray the show's identity. That is the point. The show's identity was always a mask. The mundane setting was always a disguise. The park was always a shell containing something cosmic, and Season 8 is the shell cracking open. The theory says the fans who felt uncomfortable with Season 8 were feeling exactly what the characters were feeling: displacement, disorientation, the loss of everything familiar, the ground literally disappearing beneath their feet. And the theory says the show did this deliberately. It wanted you to feel what the characters felt. It wanted the experience of watching Season 8 to mirror the experience of being launched into the unknown against your will, of watching everything you knew get replaced by something vast and terrifying and beautiful. That is not a comfortable thing to do to an audience. But regular show was never a comfortable show. It was a show that made you laugh while it showed you things about growing up that nobody else had the nerve to say out loud. And the thing it said in Season 8, the thing that made people uncomfortable, was this: the place you live is not permanent. The routine you have built is not permanent. One day the ground will move beneath you and you will have to navigate a world that does not look like the one you prepared for. And the only things you will take with you are the people, not the park, not the house, not the job, the people. Season 8 strips everything away except the characters and their relationships. And in that stripped down state, with nothing left but each other, the characters find what they were always looking for: purpose, connection, the courage to face something impossible, the courage to let Pops do what Pops was born to do, even though it means losing him. There is a theory about regular show that has nothing to do with individual characters and everything to do with the show itself. Not the characters, not the plot, the structure, the pattern that every single episode follows, repeated hundreds of times across 8 seasons, and what that pattern might actually represent. The theory is called the Escalation Theory, and it goes like this. Every episode of regular show follows the same basic architecture. Start with something mundane, a chore, a bet, a video game, a contest, something completely ordinary. Then escalate. The mundane thing goes wrong. Then it goes more wrong. Then it goes supernaturally wrong. Then it goes cosmically wrong. And by the end of the episode, what started as Mordecai and Rigby need to return a library book has become Mordecai and Rigby need to defeat an interdimensional being who feeds on overdue fees. The episode resolves, the status quo returns, and next week, it happens again. The surface reading of this pattern is that it is a comedy formula. It is. It works. The escalation is where the jokes live. The gap between "we need to mow the lawn" and "we need to fight a lawnmower demon" is inherently funny. But the escalation theory says the pattern is not just a comedy formula, it is the show's metaphor for anxiety. Think about how anxiety works. You start with something small, a task, an obligation, something manageable, and then your brain escalates it. The task becomes a crisis. The crisis becomes a catastrophe. The catastrophe becomes the end of the world. Every small thing, through the lens of anxiety, becomes the biggest thing that has ever happened. And the escalation feels real. It feels proportional. You cannot see, from inside the spiral, that the thing you are panicking about is just a library book. Regular show literalizes this. It takes the internal experience of anxiety, the way a small problem inflates, until it consumes your entire reality, and makes it external, makes it visible, makes it a story. The monsters are not real monsters. They are what problems feel like when you are 23 years old and you work at a park and you do not know what you are doing with your life. And every small failure feels like proof that you will never figure it out. The theory points to specific evidence. Mordecai and Rigby are in their early 20s. They have no clear career path. They have no savings. They have no plan. They live together. They work a dead-end job. They are, in every meaningful sense, stuck in the transition between adolescence and adulthood, the period where the gap between who you are and who you are supposed to be feels widest. And the show makes that gap literal. It makes the gap into a monster. It makes the gap into a portal. It makes the gap into a time-traveling volleyball coach who wants to destroy the universe. The escalation theory also explains why the episodes always reset. Anxiety does not resolve permanently. You do not defeat your anxiety monster once and then live peacefully forever. You defeat it, you feel relief, and then the next day, a new small thing triggers the same spiral, and you have to fight the same fight all over again. That is what regular show depicts, not the arc of overcoming anxiety, the cycle of living with it. Every episode is a panic attack that gets resolved just in time for the next one to start. Nobody believes this because it sounds like overreading. It sounds like projecting adult psychology onto a show about cartoon animals. But J.G. Quintel made this show while he was in his 20s. He made it about characters who are in their 20s. He set it in a place that feels like a trap, a dead end, a nowhere. And he gave those characters the specific kind of problems that 20-somethings have. The inability to commit, the fear of growing up, the rage at being stuck, the desperate attachment to friendships that might not survive change. The monsters are just the volume turned up. The escalation is just the feeling given a shape. And there is something else. There is a reading of the escalation pattern that connects it to the acid trip theory in a way that neither theory can explain on its own. A hallucinogenic experience does the same thing. It takes ordinary stimuli and escalates them. A pattern on a wall becomes infinite. A sound in the room becomes a symphony. A conversation becomes a confrontation with the nature of reality. The escalation pattern that defines every regular show episode is also the escalation pattern of a psychedelic experience. Start with the mundane, end with the cosmic. The gap between those 2 points is where the show lives, and whether you call that gap anxiety or drugs or just good storytelling, the structure remains the same. The show built its entire identity on that structure, and the theory says the structure is the message. Regular show is not a show about a park where weird things happen. Regular show is a show about the experience of being young and overwhelmed and unable to tell the difference between a small problem and the end of the world. The park is not a setting. It is a state of mind. There is one more character we need to talk about before we move into the deeper structural theories, and it is the one who hides in plain sight more successfully than any other. Not Thomas. Thomas was hiding as a spy. This character is hiding as a person. And the theory about her is one of the most quietly convincing readings the fandom has ever produced. Eileen, the mole, Margaret's best friend, Rigby's eventual wife, the quiet one, the one who shows up at the coffee shop and says something smart that nobody listens to, and then fades back into the scene. The show treats Eileen, for most of its run, as a supporting character. She supports Margaret. She supports Rigby. She fills space. She is there. The theory says Eileen is the smartest character in the entire show. Not kind of smart. Not smart for a side character. The smartest. Period. And the show has been telling you this the entire time, and nobody noticed because nobody ever notices Eileen. The evidence starts with camping can be cool. The gang goes camping. They forget matches. Eileen knows how to start a fire without them. They look at the sky. Eileen identifies constellations without breaking stride. She is casually, effortlessly competent in ways that the other characters cannot match. And the show does not make a big deal of it. It does not have a character say, "Wow, Eileen, you are so smart." It just shows her doing it. It trusts you to notice. Then there is the Eileen plan. During 6th grade, Eileen wrote a manifesto. A literal manifesto, titled The Eileen Plan, listing everything she wanted to accomplish by her first quarter-century on Earth. The goals include lowering the age of presidential eligibility to 25, becoming president, eliminating peanut allergies, marrying someone brilliant, preferably with several patents. These are not the goals of a background character. These are the goals of someone who, at 12 years old, believed she could restructure the government and cure a medical condition. The show reveals this detail and then moves on. It does not dwell on it. It does not build an episode around Eileen's genius. It just drops the information and lets it sit. The theory about Eileen is that she is the character who most accurately represents the show's audience. She is the person who sees everything, understands everything, and is ignored by everyone. She watches the chaos unfold around her. She offers solutions that nobody listens to. She is patient beyond reason. She falls in love with Rigby, a raccoon who forged his best friend's college rejection letter and once bet everyone's souls on a bowling match. And she loves him anyway, not because she does not see his flaws, but because she sees past them to the version of him that exists on the other side of growth. And in the finale, she is the one who gets the ending she planned for. Eileen and Rigby get married. They raise 2 daughters. The manifesto worked. Not the presidential part, not the peanut allergy part, but the part about finding someone and building something real. The Eileen plan, in its most essential form, succeeded, and nobody noticed because the show never asked you to. That is the theory. Eileen is the protagonist of regular show, and the show never told you. She is the only character who begins the series with a plan, works toward it consistently, and achieves it. Mordecai stumbles into his future. Rigby is dragged into his, but Eileen walks into hers, quietly, deliberately, with her eyes open the entire time. Nobody believes this because the show is not about Eileen. The show is about Mordecai and Rigby. Eileen is a side character, but the theory asks you to consider what it means when the side character is the only one who has it figured out. What it means when the person with the least screen time is the one who makes the fewest mistakes. What it means when the show buries its most competent character in the margins and lets the failures take center stage. That is not bad writing. That is a commentary on how the world works. The loudest people in the room are rarely the smartest. The ones who seem to have it together are the ones nobody makes a show about. And regular show, whether it intended to or not, proved this by making a show about everyone except the person who least needed saving. Now there is a theory that goes darker than any of the others, darker than the acid trip theory, darker than the Purgatory Theory, darker even than the Rigby sabotage theory. It is called the Asylum Theory, and it is the one that makes people the most uncomfortable. Not because it is the most outlandish, but because it fits too well for something that should not fit at all. The Asylum Theory says this: there is no park, there are no monsters, there are no cosmic battles or magical keyboards or sentient gumball machines. There is a mental institution, and the characters of regular show are patients inside it. The theory goes character by character. Mordecai and Rigby are young patients, possibly schizophrenic, whose condition manifests as a shared delusion in which they see themselves as animals. Their immaturity, their inability to function in the real world, their resistance to authority and structure, these are not personality traits. They are symptoms. The park they see is the institution they live in. The chores they resist are the routines imposed on them by their caregivers. The monsters they fight are the episodes they experience. Pops, according to this theory, is an elderly patient whose condition has left him in a permanent state of childlike dissociation. He does not understand money. He does not understand conflict. He does not understand the world around him. And the theory says this is not because he is a cosmic being from Lollyland. It is because his mind has retreated so far from reality that it has built its own world, a world where everything is lovely and everyone is kind and nothing bad ever happens, because the real world was too painful to stay in. Benson is a patient who, as a child, was forced into rigid expectations by his parents. The control he exerts over the other characters, his insistence on being the manager, his fury when he is not obeyed. These are not management skills. They are the coping mechanisms of someone who was never given control over anything in his real life and who has constructed a fantasy in which he is in charge, even though nobody listens and nothing changes. Skips is a staff member, an orderly, a helper. That is why the other characters go to him when something goes wrong. That is why he always has the answer. He is not immortal. He is just the one person in the building who is not a patient. His competence is not supernatural. It is professional. Muscle Man is a patient whose aggression and crude humor are defense mechanisms. The "my mom" jokes in this reading are not funny. They are a patient obsessively returning to the same subject, the same relationship, the same source of pain, over and over, unable to process it, unable to move past it, converting it into a joke because jokes are the only way he knows to make the pain small enough to carry. And High Five Ghost is the one who gives the theory its most disturbing dimension. He is a ghost. He is already dead. And the theory says that in the real world of the asylum, High Five Ghost represents a patient who has died, a former roommate, a friend who did not make it. And the remaining patients have incorporated him into their shared delusion because they cannot accept that he is gone. They see him. They talk to him. They include him in their lives. Because the alternative, the reality of his absence, is something none of them are equipped to face. The Asylum Theory is the one that gets dismissed the fastest. It sounds like the worst kind of fan theory, the kind that takes a colorful, joyful show and drapes it in misery for the sake of edginess. And there is something to that criticism. The theory does strip the show of its warmth. It does reduce its creativity to pathology. It does turn every joke into a symptom and every adventure into a breakdown. But it persists for a reason, and the reason is that regular show, underneath all its surrealism, does depict something that looks like institutional life. The characters live together. They eat together. They have schedules they are supposed to follow but often do not. They are supervised by someone who is constantly frustrated with them. They have limited freedom. They have limited purpose. They are stuck in a place they did not choose, doing work that does not matter, waiting for something to change while nothing ever does. That is institutional life. That is also the show. And the gap between those two descriptions is smaller than anyone wants to admit. Nobody believes the Asylum Theory. It is probably the least credible theory on this list, but its persistence says something about the show itself. Regular show created a world so specifically strange, so precisely calibrated to feel both hilarious and unsettling, that people instinctively search for a darker explanation. The show makes you laugh, but it also makes you wonder why these characters seem so trapped. And the Asylum Theory, however wrong it might be, is one answer to that wondering. It is the wrong answer, but it is asking the right question. There is a character in regular show who the show treats as a background figure for most of its run, and then, in the final season, reveals to be the most important non-Pops character in the entire narrative. And the theory about this character is not about what the show told you. It is about what the show was doing while you were not paying attention. Mr. Maillard, the park owner, Pops' father, the grumpy old lollipop man who shows up occasionally to berate Benson, dismiss his son, and remind everyone that the park exists because he allows it to exist. For 7 seasons, Mr. Maillard is a joke. He is the out-of-touch boss. He is the wealthy owner who does not care about the workers. He is a plot device, showing up when the show needs someone to create a crisis, and disappearing when the crisis is resolved. The theory says Mr. Maillard was never a joke. Mr. Maillard was playing the longest game in the entire show. Here is what the finale reveals. Mr. Maillard found Pops as an infant inside an asteroid. He adopted him. He raised him. He built the park, not as a business, but as a sanctuary. A place where Pops could live in safety, surrounded by people who would protect him, while Mr. Maillard quietly prepared for the moment when Pops' true nature would reveal itself and the cosmic battle with anti-Pops would begin. Everything Mr. Maillard did across 7 seasons was preparation. His dismissiveness toward Pops was not cruelty. It was distance. The distance of a man who knows his son is destined for something terrible and cannot bear to get closer than he already is. His interference with Pops' attempts to look at the stars through a telescope was not controlling behavior. It was protection. He was keeping Pops from discovering Lollyland too soon. His mysterious plans for the park in Season 7, the ones that ultimately send the entire park into space, were not the eccentricities of a wealthy man losing his grip. They were the final stages of a plan he had been executing for decades. Mr. Maillard knew. He always knew. He knew Pops was a cosmic entity. He knew Anti-Pops was coming. He knew the universe was in a cycle. And he spent his entire life, decades of it, building the infrastructure that would give Pops the best possible chance of breaking that cycle. He hired Benson to manage the park. He let Mordecai and Rigby stay despite their incompetence. He tolerated Muscle Man. He allowed Skips to anchor himself there. Every hiring decision, every financial investment, every act of apparent negligence was, according to this theory, a chess move. Mr. Maillard was assembling the team that would accompany his son to the end of the universe. And then, in the finale's epilogue, 25 years after Pops' sacrifice, Mr. Maillard dies, and he joins Pops in the afterlife. The show gives them one final moment together. Father and son, the man who found a baby in a space rock, and the god that baby turned out to be, watching the show together, watching the lives they made possible. The theory says Mr. Maillard is the true hero of regular show. Not Pops, who was born a hero. Not Mordecai and Rigby, who stumbled into heroism. Mr. Maillard, who was an ordinary man who found something extraordinary and spent his entire life making sure it survived long enough to save everything. He had no powers. He had no destiny. He had money and stubbornness and love, and he used all three to build a fortress disguised as a park and fill it with people who would fight for his son when the time came. Nobody believes this because Mr. Maillard is unpleasant. He is grumpy. He is dismissive. He forgets Benson's name constantly. He treats the park workers like they do not matter. And the theory says, yes, that is the point. That is the cover. If Mr. Maillard acted like a loving father, if he showed his hand, if he let anyone see how much he cared, the facade would collapse. The park would stop being a park and start being a bunker. The employees would stop being employees and start being soldiers. And Pops would stop being a happy, innocent man who giggles at butterflies and start being a weapon. Mr. Maillard's cruelty is the kindest thing he ever did. It kept the world normal long enough for his son to grow up in it. That is not a small thing. There is a theory about regular show that takes everything we have discussed and tries to connect it into a single unified reading. It is the most ambitious theory the fandom has ever produced, and it is the one that, if true, transforms the show from a great cartoon into something approaching art. The circular narrative theory. The theory starts with a fact. The show begins and ends with the same object. The magical keyboard. The power. In the first episode, The Power, which aired September 6, 2010, Mordecai and Rigby find a keyboard that Rigby stole from a wizard who was relieving himself in a bush. The keyboard gives them the ability to make people do whatever they tell them. They mess around with it. They send Skips to the moon by accident. Benson takes it away. Skips breaks it. The episode ends. Standard regular show. But in the series finale, a regular epic final battle, that same keyboard comes back. Mordecai and Rigby use the keyboard to travel through time and space, back to the very first episode. They relive the opening moments of The Power. They are back in their room, arguing over the keyboard, and the show loops. The last episode sends you to the first episode. The story is a circle. The theory says this is not a cute callback. This is the show's actual structure. Regular show is a loop. The finale does not just reference the pilot, it returns to it. And if Pops' battle with Anti-Pops has been causing the universe to reset, cycle after cycle, then every version of regular show that has ever existed, every iteration of the universe before the one we watched, started with the same keyboard. The same two friends, the same park, the same hole in the wall. You have been watching one cycle, one loop, and the keyboard is the key that both starts the cycle and, in the end, breaks it. Mordecai and Rigby use the keyboard to travel back and inspire Pops to find the solution, the hug that ends the stalemate. The keyboard, the silly magical object from the very first episode, is the instrument of salvation. It was always the most important object in the show. It just did not look like it for 243 episodes. The circular narrative theory says, regular show is a show about breaking out of a loop. The episodic reset, where nothing changes and the status quo returns every week, is not a formula. It is the loop. The characters are trapped in repetition, the same patterns, the same failures, the same arguments, and every week the universe gives them another chance to break out, and every week they fail and the episode resets. Until the finale, until Pops chooses something different, until the hug instead of the fight, and then the loop breaks, and the flash forward shows you what happens when people who were trapped in repetition finally get to move forward. They grow, they change, they build lives, they have children, they become artists and DJs and parents and partners, they become people. The show was always about this. The show was always about the moment when you stop repeating and start living. And it took 244 episodes to get there, because that is how long it takes. That is how many failed attempts, how many reset weeks, how many escalating disasters you have to survive before you learn the thing that sets you free. Nobody believes the circular narrative theory in its fullest form, because it requires accepting that a Cartoon Network show about a blue jay and a raccoon was telling a story about the nature of existence itself, about cycles of karma and repetition, and the possibility of transcendence through love. That is a lot to put on a show that once had an episode about a bunch of geese. But the evidence is in the show. The keyboard is in the first and last episodes. The universe does reset. Pops does break the cycle. The characters do escape. And the loop does end. Regular Show did something that almost no show in the history of television has done. It made its own episodic formula into a plot point. It took the thing that every critic dismisses, the reset, the return to status quo, the lack of permanent consequences, and it turned it into the story. The reset was the prison, the finale was the escape, and every episode in between was the sentence. That is the whole architecture. That is the blueprint underneath the jokes and the monsters and the my mom and the oh. And once you see it, sitting there in the foundation, you understand why this show stayed with people the way it did. It was never regular. The title was always a lie, and the lie was always the point. If you are still here, consider subscribing. Every new subscriber makes it possible for us to keep going deeper on shows like this. We have been talking about the characters and the structure. Now we need to talk about Death, not the concept, the character. Death, as he exists in Regular Show, is one of the strangest recurring figures in the history of animated television. And there is a theory about him that, once you hear it, changes the way you understand every scene he appears in. Death first shows up in the Season 2 episode, Over the Top. The setup is classic Regular Show. Skips accidentally kills Rigby during an arm wrestling match. Rigby dies. Not metaphorically. Rigby is dead. And then Death appears. A skeletal figure in a dark robe. The literal personification of mortality. And he challenges Skips to an arm wrestling match for Rigby's soul. Skips wins. Death, furious, brings Rigby back to life. He swears revenge. He disappears. And then he keeps coming back. In Skip Strikes, Season 3, Episode 3, Death returns. This time the stakes are a bowling match. The park workers against Death's team, which includes Death, Gary, and a guardian of eternal youth, among others. Rigby, in a move that defines his character, bets everyone's souls against Death's bowling ball, which is filled with souls. The park workers win. Death loses again. In Dead at 8, Death needs a babysitter for his son, Thomas, and Mordecai and Rigby are drafted into the job. In Exit 9B, Death fights alongside the park workers to save the park from the gauntlet of resurrected villains. In episode after episode, Death appears, and each time, the show reveals a little more about who he is. He is arrogant. He is competitive. He is petty. He holds grudges. He has a wife and a son. He has hobbies. He bowls. The theory about Death is this. Death is not a villain. Death is not even an antagonist. Death is the park's neighbor. He is the guy next door who you do not get along with, but who, when something truly terrible happens, shows up at your door ready to help. Death threatens the park workers constantly. He wagers for their souls. He tries to humiliate Skips. But when the park is genuinely in danger, in Exit 9B, in the finale, Death is there, fighting alongside them. Not because he likes them, because they are his. They are in his jurisdiction. They are the souls he has been watching over, tormenting, competing with, for years, and nobody else gets to destroy them. In one of the final episodes, Death does something extraordinary. He shows that he genuinely cares about Pops, and then he bends his own rules, his fundamental law of non-interference with the living world, in order to give Pops an advantage in his fight against anti-Pops. Death, the embodiment of ending, chooses to help preserve life. Not because it is his job, because it is his choice. The theory says this transforms death from a recurring character into a thesis statement. Regular show is a show about people who are stuck. People who are trapped in patterns, in jobs, in relationships, in loops. And death is the one force that should be able to free them. Death is the exit. Death is the door out of the park, out of the loop, out of the endless repetition. And yet death does not take them. He challenges them. He tests them. He makes them fight for the right to stay. But he never collects. He never takes the souls he threatens to take. He lets them keep going. The theory says, death is doing this because he knows what the park is. He knows about the cycle. He knows about Pops and anti-Pops. He knows that these characters need to survive long enough for Pops to break the loop. And so death, the one entity who has the power to end everything, becomes the one entity who makes sure it continues. He is not the villain. He is the guardian. He is the one who keeps the game going long enough for someone to win it. Nobody believes this, because death is played for laughs. He is the butt of jokes. He loses at arm wrestling. He loses at bowling. He needs a babysitter. He is, for most of his screen time, humiliated. But the theory says the humiliation is voluntary. Death lets them win because he needs them to survive. And the moments where death shows his true self, the moments of genuine emotion, the decision to break his own rules, those are the moments that reveal the character underneath the performance. That is not the behavior of a joke character. That is the behavior of someone who has been watching over these people for a very long time, waiting for the moment when his patience pays off. And in the finale, it does. There is a detail about death that the show buries so deep that most viewers never find it. In Dead at 8, Death needs someone to babysit his son, Thomas. Not Thomas the goat spy, a different Thomas, Death's child. And the episode follows Mordecai and Rigby as they struggle to manage a supernatural toddler who can destroy reality with a tantrum. The episode is played for comedy. It is slapstick. It is chaos. But underneath the chaos is a revelation that the show never draws attention to. Death is a parent, the personification of ending, the embodiment of everything that takes life away, has a child. He has a family. He goes home later that evening. He worries about bedtime. He worries about finding a babysitter. The most terrifying figure in the regular show universe has the same mundane concerns as every other parent in the world. And the theory says this is the show's most subversive statement about mortality. Death is not the opposite of life. Death is part of life. Death has a family and a job and hobbies and a bowling team. Death is, in the regular show universe, just another guy. A guy who happens to collect souls for a living, but a guy nonetheless. This connects to every theory about the show's relationship with mortality. If death is not a force but a person, if death is not an ending but a neighbor, then the show's entire treatment of death changes. The characters die and come back. They wager their souls and win them back. They face death and beat him at arm wrestling. And the theory says this is not because the show treats death as trivial. It is because the show treats death as something that can be negotiated with. Something that has a face and a name and a son who needs a babysitter. You cannot negotiate with a force. You can negotiate with a person. And regular show made death a person so that its characters, and by extension its audience, could learn to look mortality in the face and see something other than terror. Nobody believes this reading of death because it requires accepting that a show whose target demographic was children was making a sophisticated philosophical argument about the nature of mortality. But the show did make that argument. It made it with a skeleton who loses at bowling and needs a babysitter. And maybe that is the most effective way to make that argument. Not with gravity and darkness and solemnity, but with jokes, with humanity, with the revelation that the scariest thing in the world is, when you get close enough to see it clearly, just another person trying to get through the day. Now there is a ghost in this show who nobody thinks about. Not death, not a metaphor for death, an actual ghost. And the theory about him is one of the most heartbreaking readings the fandom has ever produced, and almost nobody talks about it, because the character himself is designed to be forgotten. High Five Ghost. Fives, the floating white specter with a hand on top of his head. Muscle Man's best friend. The quietest, most overlooked character in the entire cast. High Five Ghost has fewer lines than any other main character. He has fewer focus episodes. He has fewer moments of individual characterization. He exists, for most of the show's run, as Muscle Man's appendage. Where Muscle Man goes, Fives follows. What Muscle Man says, Fives laughs at. Muscle Man is the loud one. Fives is the quiet one. Muscle Man is the joke. Fives is the laugh track. The theory about High Five Ghost starts with the most obvious question, and the one the show never answers. How did he die? High Five Ghost is a ghost. Ghosts are dead people. That is what the word means. And regular show, across 244 episodes, never explains how High Five Ghost died, never explains who he was before he was a ghost, never explains why a dead person is working at a park alongside living people, and nobody seems to find this unusual. The show treats his death as unremarkable, as given, as not worth discussing. The theory says this silence is the loudest thing the show ever did. Consider what we know. High Five Ghost has a brother, Low Five Ghost, who is also a ghost and works as a police officer. They have a father, also a ghost. The entire family is dead. The entire family is ghosts. And they live in the same world as living people, going to work, having relationships, building lives. As if the distinction between alive and dead is a minor detail, a footnote, something you note on your tax forms but do not talk about at dinner. The theory says this is the show's most sophisticated commentary on grief. High Five Ghost is what happens when someone you love dies and you refuse to let them go. Not in a dramatic, cinematic way, in a quiet, everyday way. You keep setting a place for them at the table. You keep including them in conversations. You keep acting as if they are there because the alternative, the acknowledgement that they are gone, is something you cannot face. And eventually, if you do this long enough, it stops feeling strange. It becomes normal. The ghost becomes a person. The absence becomes a presence. And nobody questions it because questioning it would mean confronting the loss, and nobody wants to do that. Muscle Man's relationship with High Five Ghost takes on a different weight in this reading. Muscle Man is the loudest person in the room. High Five Ghost is the quietest. And the theory says this is because Muscle Man is compensating. He is being loud enough for two. He is filling the silence that High Five Ghost's death left behind. The my mom jokes, the shirt swinging, the aggression, the constant performance, all of it is Muscle Man, refusing to be still, refusing to be quiet, because quiet is where the grief lives. If he stops talking, he will have to notice that his best friend is dead. If he stops performing, he will have to sit in the silence. So he never stops. In the episode The Postcard, High Five Ghost gets his own love story. He met a woman named Celia years ago in a coffee shop. They connected. She left for Prague to finish her studies. They agreed to stay in touch. Time passes. High Five Ghost cannot read the postcard she sent. He searches for her. He gives up, and then he goes back to the coffee shop where they met, and she is there. They reconnect. In the finale, they get married. They become DJs. They tour Prague together. The theory says this love story is the show's answer to the grief reading. High Five Ghost is dead. That is a fact the show never disputes. But being dead does not mean being over. Being dead does not mean being unable to love, or grow, or build something. High Five Ghost finds Celia. He finds a career. He finds a family. He does all of this as a ghost. And the show does not treat this as remarkable. It treats it as regular. That is the word, regular, the title of the show. A regular show. A show where a ghost can fall in love and get married, and it is just regular. It is just what happens. The extraordinary becomes ordinary. The impossible becomes everyday. And the theory says that is the show's deepest message, buried in its most overlooked character. Death is not the end. It is just a change in state. And life, whatever form it takes, keeps going. Nobody believes this theory because it requires you to take High Five Ghost seriously, and the show never asks you to. The show treats Fives as a background presence, a supporting character to a supporting character. But that is the theory's point. The most important things are often the ones nobody talks about. The deepest grief is the quietest grief. And the most profound statement a show can make is the one it never raises its voice to deliver. There is an episode of regular show that won an Emmy, an actual primetime Emmy Award for Outstanding Short Format Animated Program. The episode is called Excellent. It is Season 3, Episode 17, And there is a theory about this episode that nobody talks about because the episode itself is so good that people never think to look past its surface. The plot is this. There is a restaurant that serves a 12-egg omelet. If you eat the entire omelet in a set amount of time, you win a trucker hat. Rigby, desperate for the hat, attempts the challenge despite the fact that he has a severe allergy to eggs. He goes into anaphylactic shock. He ends up in a coma, and Mordecai, watching his best friend nearly die over a trucker hat, decides to complete the challenge himself, not for the hat, for Rigby. What follows is one of the most surprisingly moving episodes the show ever produced. Mordecai trains. He prepares. He enters the restaurant and completes the challenge, and then the show goes somewhere nobody expected. After eating the omelet, Mordecai is transported to a cave. A knight greets him. The cave is filled with hats, and the knight tells Mordecai that he must choose the right hat. If he chooses wrong, he dies. There is a man named Jonathan Kimball who tried this challenge repeatedly. He was obsessed with it. He kept a journal, documenting every advantage, every strategy, every approach to winning. One day, he announced that he had figured it out. He went to the restaurant. He was never seen again. When Mordecai enters the cave, he finds Kimball's journal, and the journal reveals why Kimball failed. He had attempted the challenge so many times that he forgot what the winning hat looked like. He chose a crown. He chose wrong. And the implication, stated quietly but unmistakably, is that Jonathan Kimball is dead. The theory about Escalation is this. The episode is not about a hat. The episode is about how far you would go for someone you love. And the answer regular show gives is all the way. Into a cave, past a knight, to a wall of hats where the wrong choice kills you. You would risk death for a trucker hat, because the trucker hat is not the point. The point is proving that someone matters to you. The point is saying, through your actions, I will walk into the stupidest, most dangerous, most absurd situation imaginable if it means I can bring something back for you. The theory also says Escalation is a microcosm of the entire show. Regular show consistently takes something trivial, a bet, a contest, a chore, and escalates it until the stakes are life and death. And in the escalation, the trivial thing stops being trivial. It becomes a vehicle for real emotion. The hat becomes a symbol. The omelet becomes a test. The cave becomes a confrontation with mortality. And Mordecai's willingness to face all of it, for Rigby, for a raccoon who forged his college rejection letter, proves something about their friendship that no speech could. The show won an Emmy for this episode, and the theory says the Academy was responding, consciously or not, to the same thing the theory identifies. Escalation is the episode where regular show stopped pretending to be just a comedy and showed you, for a brief window, what it was actually capable of. The emotion was always there. The depth was always there. This episode just refused to hide it. And while we are talking about episodes that reveal more than they seem to, there is one more that deserves attention. Not because there is a grand theory attached to it, but because it demonstrates something about the show's emotional range that ties into every theory we have discussed. A Bunch of Baby Ducks, Season 2, Episode 23, aired June 6, 2011. The premise is absurd even by regular show standards. Mordecai and Rigby find baby ducks living in the park fountain while trying to clean it. The ducks imprint on them. They follow them everywhere. They call Mordecai and Rigby Mom. And when the park workers try to get rid of them, because Benson will fire them if the fountain is not cleaned, the ducks are heartbroken. They do not understand. They just know that the people they love are trying to send them away. The theory about this episode is not complicated. It is that A Bunch of Baby Ducks is the show's most direct statement about parenthood, and it comes from characters who are spectacularly unready for it. Mordecai and Rigby are not parents. They are barely functional adults. They cannot manage their own lives, let alone be responsible for vulnerable creatures who depend on them entirely. And the episode knows this. It puts them in the position of caretakers and watches them fail. They try to give the ducks away. They try to hand off the responsibility. They try to find anyone else who can handle it because they know, on some level, that they are not equipped. But then someone tries to hurt the ducks. A villain targets them, and Mordecai and Rigby, without hesitation, fight to protect them. They do not debate it. They do not weigh the pros and cons. Someone threatens their ducks and they become, in that moment, parents. Not good parents. Not prepared parents. But parents. People who will put themselves between danger and something small and helpless. Not because they know how to do it, but because the alternative is unthinkable. The baby ducks become a recurring element in the show. They come back. They grow. They develop powers. They combine into a giant duck warrior. The absurdity escalates, as it always does. But the emotional foundation remains the same. Mordecai and Rigby accidentally became the most important people in these ducks' lives. And the ducks became, equally accidentally, the most important things in theirs. The show never frames this as a lesson. It never says, and thus Mordecai learned the value of responsibility. It just shows you two slackers who did not ask to be needed and discovered that being needed changed them. The theory connects this to the finale. 25 years later, Mordecai has 3 children. Rigby has 2 daughters. They became fathers. Real ones. And the show's argument, made first with baby ducks in a fountain and completed with the flash-forward montage, is that the capacity for care exists in everyone, even in the people who seem least ready for it. You do not become a parent by being prepared. You become a parent by being there when something small needs you. And the readiness comes later, or it does not come at all. But you show up anyway, because the ducks are in the fountain, and someone has to keep them safe. Now there is a character we need to revisit. Not to add new evidence, but to sit with what the show already told us. Because the theory about Benson goes somewhere we did not follow it earlier, and the place it goes is the most uncomfortable corner of the show's emotional architecture. We talked about Benson's anger. We talked about his father. We talked about the gumball machine metaphor. But there is something else. There is Benson's history as a drummer. And the theory that connects his music career to his current state is the one that explains why Benson is, in many ways, the saddest character the show ever created. In 150-piece Kit, Season 4, which aired on October 29, 2012, the show reveals that Benson was once the drummer for a band called Heir to the Throne. He was extraordinary. He performed the legendary drum solo on a 150-piece drum kit for the band's first album. It was his moment, his contribution, the thing that made the album what it was. And then the band kicked him out. They left him completely uncredited from the album. They replaced him with a machine, the Drumatron 6. They took his work, erased his name, and moved on, as if he had never existed. Remove the cartoon framing and describe what actually happened. A young man poured his talent, his passion, his entire identity into a creative endeavor. He gave it everything he had, and the people he trusted, the people he collaborated with, the people he thought were his friends, discarded him. They did not just fire him, they erased him. They credited a machine for his work. They made him not just unsuccessful, but invisible. The theory about Benson's drumming is that the park is not Benson's second act. The park is Benson's grave. It is the place where the person he was supposed to be went to die. Benson was a musician. Benson was an artist. Benson had talent and vision and passion, and all of it was stolen from him. And what remains is a gumball machine who manages a park and screams at 2 employees who will not do their jobs. The anger is not about Mordecai and Rigby. The anger was never about Mordecai and Rigby. The anger is about Heir to the Throne. The anger is about the Drumatron 6. The anger is about a version of Benson that should have existed, a successful drummer, a credited artist, a man with a name that people knew, and does not exist because it was taken from him. And in Stick Hockey, the show reveals another piece. Benson had a protege, a younger gumball machine named Dave, who Benson trained in stick hockey, and Dave was killed by an opponent named Chong, decapitated. Benson's student, Benson's mentee, gone. And Benson carries that with him for 10 years before the show gives him the chance to avenge it. The theory accumulates. The band erased him. The protege was killed. The father taught him rage. The park trapped him. Every piece of Benson's history is a loss. Every formative experience is something being taken away. And the gumball machine, the container that holds all of it, sits at his desk and screams, because screaming is the only thing left. The gumballs rattle, and the face turns red, and the anger comes out, because there is nothing else in there. The talent was erased. The student was killed. The father never taught him anything except volume, and the 2 employees he manages every day remind him, constantly, of what it looks like to be young and careless. and oblivious to the possibility that the world will take everything from you. That is Benson. That is who the show built. And the theory says nobody believes it, because believing it means watching the show and seeing, in every Benson scene, not a funny, angry boss, but a man who lost everything and was never given the language to describe what happened to him. All he has is volume, and volume is not a substitute for understanding, but it is all his father ever gave him. Sit with that for a moment. There is one more theory about Rigby that we need to address, and it is smaller than the college letter theory, but, in its own way, equally revealing. It has to do with Don, Rigby's brother, and the specific kind of pain that comes from being the older sibling who is worse at everything. The episode Don is Season 1, Episode 10. It aired on November 8, 2010. The park is about to be audited because Pops has been paying his taxes with lollipops, and the only person who can fix the situation is an accountant. Rigby's brother Don is an accountant, and Rigby does not want him anywhere near the park. The flashback explains why. At Rigby's 6th birthday party, Don showed up and, without trying, became the center of attention. He was funnier. He was more charming. He was better at being Rigby than Rigby was. And Rigby's friends, the kids who were there for Rigby's birthday, gravitated toward Don. The party stopped being Rigby's. It became Don's. And Rigby has carried that humiliation for his entire life. But here is the detail that makes the theory work. Don is the younger brother. Don is physically larger, more successful, more socially adept, and younger. Every framework of sibling hierarchy, every assumption about birth order and authority and the natural pecking order of families, says that the older sibling should be the dominant one. And Rigby is not. Rigby is smaller, Rigby is weaker, Rigby is less accomplished. Rigby did not graduate high school. Don is an accountant. The older brother is the failure, the younger brother is the success. And the world, Rigby's world, is organized around reminding him of this every chance it gets. The theory about Don is that Rigby's entire personality, not just his relationship with Don, but his fundamental approach to life, is shaped by the experience of being overshadowed by someone who did not even have to try. Rigby resists growth because growth means competition, and competition means losing, and losing means feeling what he felt at his 6th birthday party. He stays small because small is safe. He sabotages Mordecai's college acceptance because if Mordecai grows and Rigby does not, Rigby becomes Don's older brother all over again, the one who should be ahead but is not. And then, at the end of the episode, Don reveals something that breaks the entire framework. Don says he looks up to Rigby. He says he copies Rigby. The haircut, the no-clothes thing. Don has been imitating Rigby his entire life because Don thinks Rigby is cool. The person Rigby was jealous of him. The inferiority was mutual. The hierarchy was an illusion. And the show delivers this revelation quietly, without fanfare, and then moves on to the next episode as if nothing happened. The theory says this is regular show at its most precise. The show identifies a specific kind of pain, the pain of sibling comparison, the pain of feeling like you are the wrong version of someone who shares your DNA, and then resolves it not with a dramatic confrontation, but with a quiet confession. Don looks up to Rigby. That is all. 5 words. And those 5 words undo decades of resentment. Not instantly, not completely, but enough. Enough to let Rigby breathe. Enough to crack the armor. Nobody believes this theory because it asks you to see Rigby as a tragic figure. And Rigby is, for most of the show, the agent of his own misfortune. He is lazy. He is selfish. He forges college letters. He bets people's souls on bowling matches. It is difficult to sympathize with someone who creates most of his own problems. But the theory says the self-destruction is the symptom. The 6th birthday party is the cause. Rigby destroys things because he learned, at 6 years old, that the things he builds will be taken by someone better. So he stopped building. He stopped trying. He became the person who makes jokes and causes chaos, and never invests in anything because investment means vulnerability, and vulnerability means another birthday party, where everyone leaves to be with Don. That is not an excuse. It is an explanation. And the theory says regular show knew the difference. There is an episode of regular show that most people remember as funny and do not think about again. And there is a reading of it that, once you see it, makes you understand something about Mordecai that no other episode makes as clear. The episode is called It's Time. It is Season 2, Episode 2. It aired on January 3rd, 2011, and it is the episode where Mordecai kills Rigby. Not metaphorically, not in a dream. Mordecai kills Rigby. Here is what happens. Mordecai has plans to see a movie with Margaret. Rigby, feeling left out, gets revenge by flirting with Margaret before Mordecai can make his move. Mordecai becomes jealous, intensely jealous, the kind of jealous that turns a person inside out. And as the episode escalates, as clocks are smashed and time begins to distort, Mordecai and Rigby end up in a surreal space where the argument reaches its peak. The confrontation turns physical, and Mordecai shoves Rigby off a speeding microwave. Rigby is destroyed, and Mordecai regrets it instantly. The episode resolves through time travel. Father Time sends Mordecai back to the beginning of the day, and he makes a different choice. He agrees to go to the horror movie with Rigby instead of trying to see Margaret. The episode resets. Rigby is alive. Everything is fine. But the theory says everything is not fine. The theory says It's Time is the episode that tells you, in the clearest possible terms, what Mordecai is actually capable of when his insecurity is triggered. He killed his best friend over a girl. In a moment of jealous rage, he shoved someone he loves into oblivion. The time travel erased the event. It did not erase what it revealed. The theory says, It's Time is the show's confession about Mordecai. Every other episode frames Mordecai as the reasonable one, the straight man, the responsible half of the duo. But It's Time shows you the thing underneath the reasonableness. Mordecai's calm is not peace, it is control. And when the control slips, when his fear of losing Margaret overrides his ability to manage his emotions, the result is lethal. The show, by resetting the timeline, allows this revelation to exist without consequences. Mordecai never has to reckon with what he did because time erased it, but the audience saw it. The show made sure the audience saw it. Nobody talks about this episode in these terms because the reset makes it feel like it did not happen. But it did happen. Inside the fiction, in the space before the time travel, Mordecai killed Rigby. That moment existed. That version of Mordecai existed. And the theory says every subsequent episode, every moment where Mordecai seems calm, seems measured, seems like the responsible one, is colored by the knowledge that he is one jealous outburst away from something unforgivable. This connects to the Mordecai relationship theory in a way that is difficult to look at directly. Mordecai does not fail at relationships because he is indecisive. He fails at relationships because he is afraid of what he becomes when relationships matter to him. Margaret makes him desperate. CJ makes him comfortable. And desperation and comfort are both dangerous for someone whose emotional baseline is carefully maintained control. When that control breaks, people get hurt. It's Time proved it. And the theory says Mordecai, on some level, knows it. His hesitation is not weakness, it is caution. It is a man who saw what he is capable of and decided that the safest thing he can do is never care enough to lose control again. That is a very different Mordecai. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. There is one more theory we need to sit with before we step outside the show entirely, and it has to do with something that most people notice about regular show, but never think to question. The show is obsessed with obsolete technology. VHS tapes, cassette players, laser discs, arcade cabinets, CRT televisions, rotary phones. The show's world looks like it exists in the present, mostly, but its technology is stuck in the past. And the theory that grows out of this detail is stranger and more poignant than you might expect. The nostalgia trap theory. Regular show aired from 2010 to 2017. Smartphones existed. The internet was everywhere. Social media had already transformed how people communicated. But the characters of regular show do not live in that world. They live in a world where the most advanced piece of technology is a VHS player, and the most exciting entertainment is a laserdisc marathon. The show is set in the present, but decorated with the past. And the theory says this is not an aesthetic choice, it is a diagnostic one. The theory says the characters are stuck in the past because they are stuck in the past. Not physically, emotionally. Mordecai and Rigby are in their early 20s, but their interests, their references, their entire frame of engagement with the world belongs to the decade before they were born. They play video games that look like they are from the 80s. They listen to music on physical media. They watch movies on formats that have been obsolete for years. Their nostalgia is not a hobby. It is a habitat. They live inside it because the present is too overwhelming and the future is too uncertain. The Laserdisc episodes make this explicit. In the last Laserdisc player, the show builds an entire mythology around the format. There are guardians of the Laserdisc. There are enemies of the Laserdisc. The format itself has soldiers and defenders and an ancient conflict playing out across time. And the theory says this is regular show doing what it always does, taking an internal state and giving it physical form. Mordecai and Rigby's attachment to obsolete technology is not a preference. It is a defense mechanism. They cling to the past because the past is the last place where things made sense. Before college rejection letters, before career failures, before the gap between who they are and who they were supposed to be became too wide to ignore. The Laserdisc is not a format. It is a metaphor. It is the last medium from a world where these characters felt like they belonged. The VHS tape in the finale connects directly to this theory. When Pops watches the events of regular show from the afterlife, he watches them on a VHS tape, not a streaming service, not a digital file, a VHS tape, the most nostalgic, most obsolete, most warmly remembered format in the show's vocabulary. And the theory says this is the show's final statement on nostalgia. The VHS tape is how the past is stored. It is how memories are kept. It is grainy and imperfect, and prone to degradation, and it is, for the characters of this show, the only format that feels real. The future is digital and clean and cold. The past is analog and warm and breaking down. And the characters chose the past, over and over, until the finale forced them into the future. The nostalgia trap theory says, regular show is a show about the danger of living in the past. The park is the past. The technology is the past. The episodic format, the reset, the refusal to let anything change permanently is the past reasserting itself every week. And the characters are trapped in it, not by magic, not by purgatory, not by drugs, by choice. They choose the VHS tape over the streaming service. They choose the arcade cabinet over the smartphone. They choose the park over the career. They choose the friend over the future. And the show does not judge them for this. It understands why someone would make this choice. The past is safe. The past is known. The past is a place where you have already survived everything that happened, and the uncertainty of survival is replaced by the certainty of memory. But the finale breaks them out of it. The flash forward, 25 years. Mordecai is a painter, working in a medium that has existed for centuries, but expressing himself in a way that is entirely his own. Rigby has a family, rooted in the present, building something new. The characters escaped the nostalgia trap. They stopped watching VHS tapes and started living, and the show celebrated this by ending. Because a show about being stuck cannot continue once the characters are unstuck. The ending is the proof that the escape worked. Nobody believes the nostalgia trap theory because it makes regular show sound like a cautionary tale. And the show does not feel cautionary. It feels warm. It feels like a celebration of all those obsolete formats and outdated references. And it is. The theory does not say nostalgia is bad. It says nostalgia can become a prison if you never leave it. And regular show is the story of characters who lived in that prison for 8 seasons and then, finally, walked out into the sunlight. Now there is a theory that steps outside the show entirely and looks at what regular show means as a cultural object. Not what the episodes contain, but what the show represents in the landscape of animated television. And this theory is the one that connects every other theory on this list into a single, coherent argument. The meta theory. The theory that regular show is a show about shows. J.G. Quintel has said in interviews that the core of regular show is 2 friends right out of college, dealing with stories about trying to find a girlfriend, hanging out with buddies, and trying not to get fired at work. He said that as long as the characters stayed in that phase of life, the show would exist. But the moment they moved beyond it, the moment they got families or promotions or stability, the show would naturally end. And that is exactly what happened. The finale jumps forward 25 years to show the characters as adults with families and careers, and the show ends. The show cannot exist in the space where these characters are functional. The show can only exist in the space where they are stuck. The meta theory says, this is not just a production decision. It is the show commenting on its own medium. Regular show knows it is a show. Not in a fourth wall breaking way, not through winks and nods to the audience, but structurally. It knows that it exists as a product, as content, as something that is consumed by viewers who will eventually outgrow it, and it builds that knowledge into its DNA. Consider the VHS tape. In the finale's epilogue, Pops watches the events of Regular Show on a VHS tape labeled Regular Show from the Afterlife. The show literally shows you someone watching the show. The show is a recording. The show is a piece of media that exists within its own universe, being viewed by a character who lived inside it. That is not a cute Easter egg. That is the show telling you what it is. It is a story. It is finite. It has a beginning and an end, and someone, somewhere, is watching it. And when it is over, the characters continue to exist in a space the camera cannot follow. The meta theory connects to the circular narrative theory. If the show is a loop, and the loop is being watched from the afterlife, then the VHS tape is not just a recording of one cycle. It is a recording of the cycle that finally broke. Pops watches it because it is the version that mattered, the version where he chose differently, the version where the hug replaced the fight. Every other cycle, every other reset is lost. But this one was recorded. This one was preserved. This one, the regular show we watched, is the one worth remembering. The theory also explains the show's title. Regular Show, the most deliberately misleading title in television history. Nothing about the show is regular. Every episode features supernatural chaos, interdimensional threats, cosmic warfare. The title is not describing the show. The title is describing the aspiration. The characters want a regular life. They want ordinary problems. They want to mow the lawn without summoning a demon. They want to ask a girl out without ripping a hole in space-time. They want, more than anything, to live in a show that matches its title, and they cannot. Not until the loop breaks. Not until the finale. Not until the camera stops rolling and the characters step into the regular lives they always wanted, off-screen, where nobody is watching. The meta theory says, Regular Show is the story of people trying to escape their own show. And in the end, they do. They escape into reality, into marriages and careers and children and aging, and all the mundane, beautiful, boring things that television cannot sustain. The show ends because the characters finally got what they wanted. A regular life. And a regular life does not make for good television. It just makes for a good life. Nobody believes the meta theory because it sounds like the kind of thing a film school student would say at 3 in the morning. It sounds pretentious. It sounds like it is giving a Cartoon Network show more credit than any Cartoon Network show deserves. But the VHS tape exists. The title is ironic. The loop is real. The 25-year flash forward is there. The show did these things. The theory just takes them seriously. There is a specific kind of loneliness that comes from watching a show understand something about you that you have not figured out yet. Regular Show did this to an entire generation. It aired from 2010 to 2017, which means the people who watched it as teenagers are now in their late 20s and early 30s. They are the age the characters were when the show started, and they are, many of them, living lives that look a lot like what the show depicted, working jobs that do not match their ambitions, living with friends because it is cheaper than living alone, watching their 20s turn into something they did not plan, wondering when the escalation will stop and the regular part will begin. The theory about Regular Show's cultural legacy is that the show was not just entertainment, it was preparation. It was a map of the terrain, drawn by animators who had just crossed it themselves. Quintel and his writers were in their 20s when they made this show. They were living the experience they were depicting. They were the Mordecais and the Rigbys, stuck in entry-level creative jobs, trying to figure out relationships, trying not to get fired, watching their mundane problems escalate into crises that felt world-ending even though they were not. And they put all of that into a show about a park, and the show found an audience of people who recognized themselves in it. And for 7 years, the show and its audience grew up together. The finale hit differently because of this. When the show jumped forward 25 years, it was not just showing the characters as adults. It was showing the audience their own future. Mordecai becomes a painter. He did not become a painter at 23. He became a painter after decades of being lost. Rigby married Eileen. He did not marry Eileen at 23. He married her after years of growing up. The message was clear and it was direct, and it was the kindest thing the show ever said. You are stuck now. You will not be stuck forever. The regular part comes. It just takes longer than you think. Nobody believes this theory because it is not really a theory. It is a reading. It is a way of sitting with what the show did and acknowledging that it did more than make people laugh. It made people feel seen. And being seen, when you are 23 and lost and working a job you hate and wondering if you will ever figure it out, is not a small thing. It is, for some people, the thing that keeps them going. And Regular Show, a show about a blue jay and a raccoon, a show that once had an episode about a bunch of geese, did that. It kept people going. It kept an entire generation company during the years when company mattered most. There is one more theory we need to discuss before we reach the final one, and it is a theory about the show's relationship with masculinity, because Regular Show is, quietly and consistently, one of the most thoughtful explorations of male friendship, male emotion, and male growth that animated television has ever produced. And nobody talks about it because the show never announces what it is doing. The masculinity theory. Look at the men of Regular Show. Mordecai, who cannot express his feelings until it is too late. Rigby, who converts every emotion into a joke or a scheme. Benson, who was taught that the only acceptable male emotion is anger. Muscle Man, who deflects vulnerability with crudeness. Skips, who processes centuries of grief in complete silence. High Five Ghost, who is so quiet he barely registers. These are not just characters. These are archetypes of masculine emotional suppression. Each one represents a different strategy for avoiding the work of actually feeling things. Mordecai avoids through hesitation. He feels deeply but cannot act on those feelings. He freezes at the moment of emotional commitment, whether that commitment is romantic, professional, or personal. He is the man who knows what he wants and cannot bring himself to say it, not because he does not have the words, but because saying the words would make him vulnerable. And vulnerability is the one thing his version of masculinity does not permit. Rigby avoids through chaos. If everything around you is on fire, nobody notices that you are crying. Rigby creates disasters because disasters redirect attention. They turn inward emotions into outward events. They transform the invisible, terrifying question of, "What am I feeling?" into the visible, manageable question of, "How do we fix this?" Rigby is never more comfortable than when he is in crisis, because crisis gives him permission to feel things without having to name them. Benson avoids through anger, and we have discussed this in detail. But the masculinity theory adds a dimension that the Benson theory alone does not. Benson is not just angry because of his father. Benson is angry because anger is the one emotion that his environment, his upbringing, his culture, his specific version of masculine identity allows him to express. He is not allowed to be sad. He is not allowed to be afraid. He is not allowed to be hurt, but he is allowed to be angry. Anger is the approved emotion. Anger is the one that does not get you called weak. And so every other emotion, the sadness, the fear, the hurt, the loneliness, the memory of a band that erased him, and a protege who was killed, all of it gets converted into anger, because anger is the only output the machine was built to produce. Muscle Man avoids through performance. His entire personality is a character he is playing. The loud voice, the crude jokes, the shirtless swagger, none of it is him. It is the version of him that he constructed to survive in a world that rewards a very specific kind of male energy. The kind that takes up space, the kind that never shows weakness, the kind that turns every interaction into a contest. And underneath the performance is a man who loves one woman with an intensity that terrifies him, who has a relationship with his father that he can barely talk about, who lost his best friend to death and processed it by making more noise. And Skips. Skips avoids through work. Endless, repetitive, eternal work. Fix the problem, do the maintenance, answer the question, perform the ritual, keep going, never stop. Because stopping means sitting with the memory of Mona. Stopping means feeling, in the present tense, a loss that happened centuries ago but has never diminished. Skips does not talk about his feelings because he has had centuries to learn that talking does not help. Feeling does not help. Nothing helps except the next task, the next crisis, the next thing that needs fixing. And so he fixes things, forever, because the alternative is standing still, and standing still is where the grief catches up. The masculinity theory says Regular Show is a show about men who do not know how to feel, and the entire 8-season arc, from the pilot to the finale, is the story of these men slowly, painfully, incompletely learning how. Mordecai learns to choose. He does not learn on screen. He learns in the 25-year gap, but he learns. Rigby learns to commit. He goes back to school. He graduates. He marries Eileen. He stops running from the future and walks into it. Benson does not yell forever. The show's quiet implication, through his continued presence at the park, through his willingness to keep showing up for people who drive him insane, is that Benson is learning a different register. Muscle Man puts down the performance long enough to propose, to marry, to become a father. And Skips keeps going. Skips will always keep going. But his going is not empty. It is not avoidance anymore. It is purpose. He stays at the park because the park matters. The people matter. The work matters. And purpose is not the same as distraction, even when it looks identical from the outside. The masculinity theory says this is the show's most important contribution to the conversation about men and emotions. It does not lecture. It does not preach. It does not have an episode where a character says, "It is okay to have feelings." It just shows you men having feelings. Poorly, incompletely, in the wrong way at the wrong time, and then slowly, over 8 seasons, getting a little bit better at it. The show understands that emotional literacy is not a switch you flip. It is a skill you build, and the building takes years, sometimes decades, sometimes a 25-year gap between the end of the show and the montage that proves you figured it out. Nobody believes the masculinity theory because the word masculinity makes people think of think pieces and academic language and the kind of analysis that sucks the fun out of things. But the theory does not suck the fun out of regular show. It adds a layer to the fun. It explains why the comedy hits the way it does. It explains why Benson's meltdowns are funny and also a little bit heartbreaking. It explains why Muscle Man's "my mom" jokes make you laugh and also make you wince. It explains why Mordecai freezing at the exact wrong moment is both comedy and tragedy at the same time. The show is doing both things at once. It is making you laugh at these men and also seeing them fully in all their broken, beautiful, incomplete humanity. That is what regular show does better than any other animated show of its era. It holds the comedy and the pain in the same hand, and it never drops either one. And it does this through a technique that the show never names but deploys in almost every episode. The show lets silence do the work. After the joke lands, after the escalation peaks, after the monster is defeated and the status quo is restored, there is always a moment, a breath, a shot of the park at dusk, or the house at night, or the characters sitting on the steps looking at nothing. The show holds on these moments. It does not fill them with dialogue or music or narration. It just sits there, and in that silence, in that still frame of 2 friends on a porch with nothing happening, the episode deposits its real meaning, not in the comedy, not in the chaos, in the quiet after, in the exhale. This is a deliberate choice. Quintel and his team understood that the most effective emotional beats are the ones the audience discovers for themselves, in the spaces between the jokes, in the moments where the show trusts you to feel something without being told what to feel. The silence is where the theories come from. The silence is the gap that the audience fills with meaning. And the meaning they find, whether it is the acid trip theory or the purgatory theory or the friendship theory, is theirs. The show created the space. The audience furnished it. That is why these theories persist. That is why they matter. Not because they are correct, because the show made room for them. It built a world that was precise enough to feel real and ambiguous enough to feel infinite. It told you exactly what happened and let you decide what it meant. And the fact that so many people decided it meant something, the fact that a show about a blue jay and a raccoon generated this many readings, this many late-night conversations, this many moments of lying awake thinking about what Pops's hug really meant, that is the highest compliment a piece of art can receive. You built something that people cannot stop interpreting. You built something that grows in the mind after the screen goes dark. There is one more theory, the last one, and it is the one that I have been building toward this entire time, even though I did not tell you that, because the theory itself works the same way. It builds, it accumulates, and by the end, the weight of it is so heavy that it feels less like a theory and more like a truth. The friendship theory. Every theory on this list is about something dark. The acid trip theory says the show is a hallucination. The purgatory theory says the characters are dead. The asylum theory says they are institutionalized. The The Rigby sabotage theory says friendship is a form of control. The Benson theory says anger is the residue of stolen dreams. These theories are compelling because they are dark, and darkness feels sophisticated. Darkness feels analytical. Darkness feels like the kind of insight that comes from looking closely at something the mainstream audience missed. But the friendship theory says all of those theories are wrong. Not factually wrong, emotionally wrong. They are wrong because they miss what the show actually cares about. And what the show actually cares about, from the first episode to the last, from the keyboard to the hug, is friendship. Not as a theme, not as a sentiment, as a structure, as a force, as the thing that holds the universe together. Look at the evidence, not the dark evidence, the other evidence. The evidence that is so obvious it becomes invisible. Mordecai and Rigby have every reason to hate each other. Rigby forged Mordecai's college letter. Mordecai killed Rigby in a jealous rage. They fight constantly. They sabotage each other. They bring out each other's worst instincts, and yet they stay. They stay friends. They stay partners. They stay in that house, in that park, together. Not because they have no other options, although the Purgatory Theory would argue otherwise. Because they choose to. Every day, every episode, every time the universe gives them a reason to walk away, they choose to stay. Skip stays at the park. He is immortal. He could go anywhere. He could live on a mountaintop. He could disappear into history. But he stays. He does maintenance. He fixes things that break. He answers questions from people who will be dead long before he ages a single day. He stays because the park is where Mona's memory lives. He stays because the park is where his grief has a home. He stays because the people there, the annoying, reckless, impossible people, are his friends. And friendship, for an immortal, is not a given. It is the rarest thing in the world. It is the one thing that death takes from you over and over, and you keep reaching for it anyway, because the alternative is an eternity alone, with a skip that nobody remembers the reason for. Benson stays. He has been cheated by a band. He has lost a protege. He has every reason to be bitter, to leave, to find a job where people respect him, but he stays. And the theory says the reason he stays is that the park crew, as infuriating as they are, is the closest thing to family he has. He yells at them because he cares. He threatens to fire them because the threat is the only language he has for love, and they know it. They have always known it. Mordecai and Rigby do not fear Benson's threats because they know the threats are not real. They know Benson needs them as much as they need him. Muscle Man and High Five Ghost stay. They are the quietest friendship in the show. The loud one and the silent one. The living one and the dead one. They complement each other so completely that you stop noticing how strange the pairing is. A man and a ghost. Best friends. And neither of them ever questions it. Neither of them ever says, "Is it not weird that my best friend is dead?" They just are. They just exist together. And the theory says this is the show's purest expression of its central idea. Friendship does not require explanation. Friendship does not require logic. Friendship just is. And Pops. Pops who loves everyone. Pops who has never met a person he did not want to hug. Pops who is a cosmic entity of pure good and channels that goodness not into world domination or universe building or any of the things a god could do, but into friendship, into showing up at the park and being kind, into laughing at things that are not funny because the laughter makes other people happy. Pops, in the end, saves the universe not with power but with a hug. He defeats his brother, the embodiment of pure evil, by embracing him. Not fighting, hugging, the physical act of holding someone close. The friendship theory says this is the answer to every question the show raises. Why is the park so strange? Because friendship attracts the extraordinary. Why does the status quo keep resetting? Because friendship is a daily choice, not a one-time event. Why do the characters keep making mistakes? Because friendship is not about being perfect. It is about staying. Why does the universe keep cycling? Because it is waiting for someone to choose love over combat. Why does the show end the way it does, with a 25-year flash forward and a group of people who have grown and changed and built lives, but who still come back to the park for a reunion? Because friendship does not expire. It does not have a season finale. It just keeps going, long after the cameras turn off and the credits roll and the audience falls asleep. The friendship theory is the one nobody believes because it is not dramatic. It is not dark. It does not reframe the show through a lens of tragedy or horror or madness. It just says the show is about what it says it is about. Friends, hanging out, going through hard times, making terrible decisions, apologizing, forgiving, staying, growing, becoming the people you were always supposed to be, not in spite of your friends but because of them. That is not a theory. That is the show. And maybe that is why nobody believes it. Because it is too simple. Because the truth usually is. You spend all this time looking for hidden meanings and darker interpretations and structural analyses, and the meaning was right there on the surface the whole time. Two friends, a park, a keyboard they stole from a wizard, and the rest of their lives unfolding in front of them. Strange and terrifying and boring and beautiful. One episode at a time. Regular show ran for 8 seasons, 244 episodes. It premiered on September 6, 2010, and ended on January 16, 2017. It was created by J.G. Quintel, who made it from a student film about 2 guys working the graveyard shift at a convenience store who accidentally ate some candy that changed the way they saw the world. The show won an Emmy. It made a generation feel seen. It turned the mundane into the extraordinary so many times that the two became indistinguishable. And it ended with a hug. Not a fight, not a trick, not a clever strategy. A hug. The simplest act of love there is. And it saved everything. Think about every theory we have walked through tonight. The acid trip theory, which says the world is a hallucination born from a student film about 2 guys who ate the wrong candy. The Purgatory Theory, which says the park is a waiting room between life and death. The Skips Theory, which says an immortal man's grief warped reality around him. The Muscle Man Theory, which says crude humor is the armor of someone who was never taught how to be soft. The Thomas Theory, which proved that the most boring character was the biggest liar. The Rigby Sabotage Theory, which proved that love and control can look identical. The Benson Theory, which turned a gumball machine into a portrait of stolen dreams. The Mordecai Relationship Theory, which turned romantic failure into the most realistic depiction of emotional paralysis on animated television. The Pops Theory, which turned a silly man with a top hat into the oldest being in the universe. The Escalation Theory, which said the show's formula was a metaphor for anxiety. The Eileen Theory, which said the smartest person was the one nobody noticed. The Asylum Theory, which tried to make the show darker than it was, and failed only because the show was already darker than anyone realized. The Mr. Maillard Theory, which turned a grumpy old man into the architect of salvation. The Circular Narrative Theory, which said the show was a loop and the keyboard was the key. The Death Theory, which turned a recurring villain into a guardian angel who loses at bowling on purpose. The High Five Ghost Theory, which said the most profound statement about grief was the one nobody raised their voice to make. The Excellent Theory, which said love is walking into a cave for a trucker hat. The Baby Ducks Theory, which said parenthood begins when something small needs you and you do not run. The Dawn Theory, which said sibling comparison can shape a life before it begins. The Nostalgia Trap Theory, which said obsolete technology is the habitat of people afraid of the future. The It's Time Theory, which said Mordecai is one jealous moment away from destroying everything. The Meta Theory, which said the show was a show about shows, about escaping the fiction and entering reality. The Cultural Legacy Theory, which said the show was a map drawn by people who had just crossed the same terrain. The Masculinity Theory, which said the show was about men learning, slowly and incompletely, how to feel. Every single one of these theories is trying to explain the same thing. Why does this show matter? Why does a cartoon about a blue jay and a raccoon who work at a park and fight monsters stay with people years after it ended? Why do people lie awake at night thinking about Pops flying into the sun? Why do people tear up when they see the flash forward? Why do people remember the "Oh" and the Jolly Good Show, and the way Benson's face turns red, and the way Skips always knows the answer? The theories are fun. The theories are interesting. The theories make you think about the show in ways the show never explicitly asked you to think about it. But the show did not need the theories. The show was always telling you exactly what it was. A show about friendship. A show about growing up. A show about the years when nothing makes sense and everything feels impossible, and the only thing that gets you through it is the person standing next to you. Whether that person is a blue jay, or a raccoon, or a gumball machine, or a ghost. Those years end. The show promised you that. The flash forward proved it. The regular part comes. And when it does, You look back at the chaos and the monsters and the time-traveling volleyball coaches and the bowling matches with death, and you do not feel afraid. You feel grateful, because those were the years that made you. They made you messy and scared and unsure and desperate, and they also made you brave. They made you the kind of person who walks into caves for trucker hats, the kind of person who forgives someone who forged your rejection letter, the kind of person who keeps showing up at a park even though the park keeps trying to kill you. And the person who was there with you during all of it, the one who stayed, the one who was your Mordecai or your Rigby or your Eileen or your Pops, that person is still there, 25 years later, sitting on a bench, at a park, remembering. The theories say the park is purgatory, or a drug trip, or an asylum, or a simulation, or a loop. But maybe the park is just a park. Maybe it is a place where people who do not know what they are doing yet go to figure it out, surrounded by people who are equally lost, and the figuring out takes a long time and involves a lot of monsters and a lot of mistakes, and a lot of moments where you think you will never get it right. And then one day, without any fanfare, without a dramatic speech, without an episode devoted to the breakthrough, you do get it right. And you look around, and the park is not a prison anymore. It is a place you used to live. It is a place where you became yourself, and you are grateful for it. Regular Show understood this. The whole time, from the first keyboard to the last hug. It understood that the years of being stuck are not wasted years. They are the years where the invisible, unglamorous, undramatic work of becoming a person happens. The work does not make for good television. It does not escalate. It does not turn mundane into supernatural. It just happens, quietly, in the gaps between episodes, in the 25-year flash forward that the camera does not show. But the show knew it was happening. The show trusted you to know it was happening too. Regular Show. It was never regular. It was never supposed to be. And the title, the lie, the mismatch between the name and the content was always the point. Because the people who watched it were living lives that felt regular, boring, stuck. And the show said no. Your life is not regular. Your life is extraordinary. You just cannot see it yet because you are inside it. But one day you will look back and you will see the monsters and the magic and the moments that felt like the end of the world. And you will realize they were not obstacles. They were the story. They were your story. And it was worth telling. All of it. Every theory. Every episode. Every oh. And every jolly good show. And every time Benson turned red. And every time Skips knew the answer. And every time Rigby bet something he should not have bet. And every time Mordecai froze when he should have spoken. And every time Muscle Man said my mom. And every time High Five Ghost was just there, quietly, in the background, being enough. All of it was the show saying the same thing, over and over, in 244 different ways. You are not alone. You are not stuck forever. And the people who love you, the strange, imperfect, impossible people who show up at your park every day, they are the reason the universe does not reset. They are the reason the loop breaks. They are the reason the story has an ending instead of just another beginning. There is a scene in the finale that does not get talked about enough. After the flash forward, after the montage of marriages and children and careers, the park workers reunite. They are older, they are gray, they are slower, they walk where they used to run, and they stand in the park, the same park, and they look around, and the feeling in the room is gratitude. They wish Pops could see it, and the understanding, spoken and unspoken, is that without Pops, none of them would have these lives. That is the scene. That is the whole scene. Old friends standing in a park they used to work at, grateful for the life they built after they left it. That is what Regular Show was building toward for 8 years. Not the cosmic battle, not the time travel, not the dimensional warfare. This. Friends in their 50s, standing in the grass, saying thank you. The theories try to explain why the show is strange. The show was always trying to explain why friendship is not. Friendship is the most regular thing in the world. It is the most ordinary, most everyday, most unremarkable phenomenon in human experience. Two people who like each other and keep showing up. That is all it is. And Regular Show spent 244 episodes proving that, even the most regular thing, is extraordinary when you look at it closely enough. When you describe what friendship actually asks of you, the patience and the forgiveness, and the willingness to fight a lawnmower demon, because your friend needs you to. It stops being ordinary. It starts looking like something that could save a universe. And it did. Pops hugged anti-Pops. That was friendship. Not romantic love, not family obligation, not cosmic duty. Friendship. The willingness to hold someone who is trying to destroy you because you believe, against all evidence, that there is something in them worth saving. Pops did not hug anti-Pops because the universe required it. Pops hugged anti-Pops because that is what Pops does. That is what the park taught him. That is what Mordecai and Rigby and Benson and Skips and Muscle Man and High Five Ghost and Eileen and Thomas and Margaret and CJ and Dawn and Mr. Maillard and Death and the Baby Ducks taught him. You hold on, even when it does not make sense. Even when the person you are holding is trying to end everything. You hold on because that is what friends do. And sometimes, holding on is enough. The show knew this from the beginning. From the power. From the keyboard. From the hole in the wall that Mordecai covered with a poster. The show knew that the answer to every question it would ever ask was already there, in the first episode, in the simplest possible form. Two friends, a room, a mess they made together, and the decision, made without discussion, without deliberation, without any of the drama that the show would spend 8 seasons perfecting, to clean it up. Together. That is regular show. That is every theory nobody believes. And maybe, now, lying there in the dark with your eyes half closed and your mind drifting between the park and whatever park you are building in your own life, one or two of them feel a little more believable than they did before. Maybe the darkness is not the answer. Maybe the simple reading is the true one. Maybe the show really was about what it said it was about. And maybe that is enough. It was always enough. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.